The Lone Ranger sold his wardrobe. The Lone Ranger sold his bad dog. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know, 'cause times change, I know.
On some days, he's more than humble. On some days, he's cold and mad, mad as hell. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder. Sure as the hours. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder. You say. On some days, he's more than humble. On some days, he's cold and mad, mad as hell. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him, and you can't hardly know. It's so strange. Well, I know. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder. Sure as the hours. Joy, joy, joy. Work, work, work harder. You say. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, you say.
Come along, join the fun, in a world where adventure is never done. Every corner we turn, a new friend in tow. It's time to start the magic on the Globus Show. It's time to learn and grow on the Globus Show. See the sights, so much to know. Across the lands, together we go. Hand in hand we join the flow. Discover wonders in the Globus Show, where every day's a brand new episode. on the Globus Show. It's time to learn and grow on the Globus Show. See the sights, so much to know across the land. Together we go, hand in hand we join the flow. Discover wonders in the Globus Show, where every day's a brand new episode on the Globus Show. It's time to learn and grow on the Globus Show.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Good stampy morning. What up, Twitch? What up, Cosmic? What up, Red Hobbit? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up, tiny people in my chatterino? It's your boy. And Stampy. What up, Tenacious Liege? Oh, a lot of stuff happened yesterday with the AI news. Show them the face. Look at the face. What a boy. He's such a boy. All right. So we should probably get into the contents. But before we get into the other contents, we're going to touch base with my favorite AI positive leftist, Liz the developer. And before we do that, I'm going to turn the sound on for the desktop audio so you can hear too.
You ever read that little red book? You know, the one that like talks about kind of the most leftist ideas. Talks a lot about the preconditions needed for.
So the comment says, when you market yourself as a leftist, but bought all the marketing around AI hype, hook, line, and sinker.
The change in the system, you know, words we can't use on the app. I get a lot of this from people who call themselves leftist, right? But that what they want is to preserve jobs for people. And like, bro, that's capitalism again. Like, you're not revolutionary for trying to force humans to go do jobs that machines can now do. And maybe you think, oh, well, no, they can't do it. I'm telling you, man, I read the research and publish videos on it every day. And I teach it as a professor, and I teach it to the Fortune 500. And I'm watching the rollout of AI across corporate America. And I'm also teaching people how to do it effectively and not just in a bad way. I will say I get a lot of people saying, no, this is bad. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not bad for me. So it must be a skill issue. Most people don't know what they would do with a personal assistant, right? They do not understand what it is that they can hire people to do or what cognitive offloading actually allows you to do. But I've started a lot of companies, and so I know what you can hire people for and what will speed you up and what will slow you down. And I've architected a lot of teams before. And I actually taught 2 million people some part of their CS education. So when you say, like, I bought the marketing, like, it's the worst kind of mansplaining. I mean, you're just the worst mansplainer on earth, right? Like, and everybody sees you do this, and you don't win any points. You just sound silly and like you don't have the skills to use this thing. And that's fine. It takes a while for people to learn and adopt these things, but I just, every time somebody comes into my comments and they're just like, oh, you don't understand. You read the marketing. I'm like, did you see any of my videos? Have you seen any of my videos? Do you know who I am, bro?
And Liz, the developer, has this little website in which they offer lessons on how to use the tools for free. And apparently we need to take a break and feed the Stampy. Stampy snacks do 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 do. Stampy snacks do 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 do. Stampy snacks do 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 do. Snacks. Wants more snacks do 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 do. Wants more snacks do 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 do. More snacks do 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 do. Wants more snacks. That's all the snacks do 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 do. That's all the snacks do 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 do. That's all the snacks do 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 do. That's all the snacks. You were so good and so patient. Coming to face. Good job, buddy. Good job, buddy. All right. Another one from Liz.
I'm not sure whether the algorithm that showed you this video and every other video you've seen today should.
Yeah, so
To my knowledge, she does not. Also, what up, Michael? And there he goes. And I didn't switch scenes.
agree with you in principle.
I'm not sure whether the.
Stop. I don't believe that she does. Let's find out. Real quick. Because I feel you. I like TikTok for what it is. Maybe. Oh. All right. She does not post her short form content. But this is related to her multiverse school. So there is this. But no, it doesn't look like the short form content is on here. Professor Liz Howard. So that's what we get. All right. Tell me about algorithms, big guy.
Algorithm that showed you this video and every other video you've seen today should.
Yeah, so I agree with you in principle. I'm a computer science and cybersecurity professor, but gotta talk about the history of algorithms and why they exist. I know that the popular understanding is that companies made all these algorithms because of their evil desires to steal all your attention, but that's not actually how that stuff happened. There was this website called Stumble Upon, and that's how we
Stumble Upon. Remember the number of times I've talked about Stumble Upon and how good Stumble Upon was? Man.
figured out how recommendation algorithms worked. The goal of Stumble Upon was to make content that was niche rise to the niche, the attention of the niche that was interested. They were like, oh, there's like fractal niches, right? And so there's little tiny content creators that talk about, you know, something that only a few people are interested in, and we want to make sure that the people who are interested get that stuff. Then you got SEO, search engine optimization, which was a blight on the world. So we had this thing called an autoencoder, and what it does is it figures out what is this content. It sort of puts it in a place, in a like super high dimensional like space, and tries to figure out its coordinates in that space. For people who were paid a lot of money to figure out how to write articles so that you would put it in the space that people were commonly searching for, right? Specifically like a plumber in your area that wanted to come up first. This is not a new thing, like, you know how, like, AAA plumbing is like that so that they come first in the phone book. There's this incentive, right, to sort of game these algorithms, and that's, like, the problem. If you know, through a magic genie wish, deleted recommendation algorithms, the internet would suck for a really long time until we figured out a new thing. Because all those companies still have these techniques on deck. Like, they're ready to use them. They're ready to rename themselves AAA plumbing, right? Problem is that attention is a commodity, and so people are going to develop things that try to seize attention. And if King James couldn't get rid of the printing press, like, we're not going to get rid of some technologies that have an incentive for their use. Saying the current state of affairs is, like, great, right? There's problems to solve. Usually the way that we solve those problems is more technology, not less. Because people already know how to beat the game where we had less technology is the problem.
True. Okay. So, I was listening to this yesterday. This Alex Kantrowitz, along with my friend and yours, Ed Zitron. And we got to a particular point and as usual, like, Ed Zitron is a grifter. He's full of shit. He gish gallops. He makes conclusions without evidence, and then just expects you to believe him. And he does the Jordan Peterson thing where you say a lot of words and try to sound really smart. But we got to this point at around 1 minute, 17 seconds, where the host asked Ed Zitron a very interesting question.
So let me ask, what is the best argument against the claims that you're making?
And this is like going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, right? Being able to steel man your opponent's position, being able to, explain what the counter argument to your argument is. It shows you have a firm grasp of the information and, and really understand both sides of the argument.
Have you heard one?
Honestly, I would love to. It very much is if a frog had wings, it could fly. It's like, if they get better, sure. If they manage to make this much, much cheaper and they end up working out a thing that could sell really well, sure.
Can I ask?
So Ed doesn't. By his own admission, Ed doesn't have the counter to his argument because Ed is full of shit. If Ed presents a counter to his argument that undermines his grift.
You run a PR firm. That's your core business.
What do you mean?
That's.
And when asked about his core business at the PR firm, Ed seems to get a tad defensive.
What brings in the most revenue?
With Easy PR, no. It's spread across the businesses.
Wait, okay.
As in
media and a PR.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you, as someone who owns a PR firm, decide that this is? I'm just curious. This is not like
a lot of my business is working with journalists to pitch clients to them.
Right.
And I stay away from AI stuff. I don't work with. I worked with a consumer TV company. I didn't write about anything like that for obvious reasons. The thing is, a lot of my business is talking to journalists. Journalists want to be presented stuff that matters to them, that comes from a person who's considered and read their work. The fact is, I consider and read their work all the time. It's what I've done for like the 10, 15 fucking years I've been doing this business. Like, it's the same thing, except I started writing. And yeah, I fairly well demonstrated that I understand what I'm talking about in the writing I do. And I also firewall that very precisely.
So it hasn't hurt the PR firm then?
No.
Okay.
No, and in fact, the clients kind of like it. Like they appreciate the fact that I can elucidate that I understand business. And it's one of those things where, yeah, it is, at some point, the media stuff will probably take it over, but I'm having a great time doing all of it. But on top of that, when it comes to doing PR, doing media relations, so much of what PR people don't have is basic knowledge. And I do pride myself on knowing what I'm fucking talking about. And it helps, and it's great. And also, there are strict firewalls. CES is a great example. So I had a client at CES at the time. I would pitch them for the show, pitch a journalist to come on my show beforehand, before I pitched them the client, because I didn't want any possible situation where they thought for even a second, even though I don't think they'd think this, that them saying no to my client would be anything to do with the show. And there were people that said no to stuff who came on the show, and it was fine. Who gives a shit? Like, it's like they are separate entities, and my clients are very respectful of that as well.
Can we just take a moment of levity, because
PR guy. And this moment of levity is great. I'm sure you've never heard this moment of levity before.
the way I first found out about what you do was when, speaking of CES, I think you told like a bunch of people that, you would meet them at Up Doug, and they would say, "What's up, Doug?" and you would say, "Nothing much, you."
Ed Zitron did the Up Dog joke. Cool. Moving on. Ed also in that conversation, Ed talks about how the fact that while companies are getting rid of workers, AI has nothing to do with it. And CBS News says,
artificial intelligence is presenting a real challenge to the American workforce. A fresh new report shows more than 10,000 jobs have been cut so far this year due to the rise of generative AI in private companies. Bank of America's CEO talked about the impact of AI on job growth on Face the Nation Sunday.
AI gives you a place to go that we've never been able to go before. In other words, there are jobs that take text, think about it, and produce it. Many, many jobs in our company, our research team. Now you're able to maybe use a machine to enhance that activity. So we believe that people who harness AI for their benefit are going to be very successful.
CBS News Money Watch reporter Megan Cerullo joins us now in studio to talk about all of this. Megan, good morning, a warm welcome. Great to have you here. So 10,000 jobs lost. You also wonder, are any jobs being created? But which roles are most at risk right now? Who's really being hit hardest?
We've been talking for a while now about AI's potential to take over jobs. It's no longer a possibility or a likelihood, it's a reality. This new report from Challenger, Gray and Christmas, an outplacement firm, shows that so far this year, so for the first 7 months of 2025, employers cut 10,000 jobs, and they attributed those cuts directly to AI. Not surprisingly.
What up, Maddie?
A lot of the job cuts are concentrated in the tech sector because AI is good at things like coding. It's also good at the kinds of rote, repetitive tasks that are usually associated with entry-level work, which is making it harder for some recent college graduates to land their first jobs out of school.
I mean, for Gen Z and I guess younger millennials, they have just had a really tough time with the world. I mean, if they're just now graduating or they've just started at a new job, and they're in the tech sector, which they have been told forever is going to bring them riches and success, what are they experiencing right now?
Right. Well, some of them might be having concentration remorse. By that, I mean regretful for having concentrated in these subjects that they thought would provide them a lot of opportunities for jobs. What they're finding is, according to the One Career platform, job postings for recent college grads are down 15%. Meanwhile, applications for those same jobs are up 30%.
Wow.
So they're finding that it's even harder. It was hard to begin with. It's even harder to land that first job out of school.
Now, you mentioned this report specifically citing.
And that's a point I want to point out, right? Like, it was brought up yesterday about the Workday lawsuit. And I don't want to get too deep into it because it doesn't look like there's a huge amount of information. But in 2024, Derek Mobley filed an employment discrimination lawsuit against Workday, alleging that their algorithm-based job applicant screening system discriminated against him and other applicants based on race, age, and disability. Now, this may be true. What up, old lobster? This may be true, right? Like, I don't know enough. Not enough has come out to say one way or the other. What I do know is, based on this article, is that he applied for over 100 jobs without success. Okay. Now, we have seen stories of other people applying up to 800 jobs without success. And they are young, they are fresh out of college, or fresh off their first job, or any of the stuff like that. So, I'm just saying, I don't know if this complaint is actually valid. The initial lawsuit was dismissed, but then it was allowed to be amended, and yeah, Workday's initial motion to dismiss the case was granted, allowing for amendments to be made. However, the judge later denied its attempt to dismiss the newly amended complaint. So we have a total of 5 plaintiffs, including Mobley, and where we are proceeding. And that's all we have at this point in time. Discovery could be interesting, right? If we can find some data that supports this claim, obviously that like discriminating against a black disabled man in his 40s is terrible, right? We can't have that. I'm just not sure if that's the actual problem, right? Because again, a lot of people just coming out of college are also having difficulty finding jobs, some due to economic concerns, some due to AI, some due to whatever other factors, the ghost job thing, whatever that was about. All these factors could be leading to this condition. Are they going to point out that thousands of federal and state government workers have been fired, and those people with experience and skills are flooding the labor market? New grads are never going to be hired over those people. That's another aspect of it, right, Maddie? Like, you have expanded the labor pool by a significant hundreds of thousands of people, like, it's wild out here.
It's AI as the reason for the job losses, but we talk so much about government cuts, tariffs as well, all these other forces on the economy.
Apparently they are, Maddie. just a single line there, but like they did get to it. So, yeah.
Economy, how much of that is also weighing down people?
There are a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of factors at play here, and it's not fair to attribute all of these cuts to AI because we have tariffs and policy and economic uncertainty, which is weighing on businesses. And they are saying that that's causing them to pause investment and pause hiring decisions because they're anticipating that their own costs are going to go up. And where's a good place to cut costs? On labor. So they're cutting back on hiring and they're laying workers off. In the retail industry, for example, goods importers are anticipating having to pay higher costs on a lot of their imports, and that's going to affect their bottom lines and in turn affect hiring.
Yeah, tough situation for so many people, but they should follow your reporting. I know you also give advice on what you can do with this brand new world we're in. Megan Cirillo, great to have you with us this Tuesday. Thanks.
All right. So, yeah. The yesterday after we ended stream, OpenAI dropped a couple of open source models that had been previously dropped and then pulled back, and Anthropic did an update to their Opus 4 model. So let's get up to speed on that.
Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief.
Flashbang.
It's been clear for a while that this was poised to be a very big week. Hints had suggested that in addition to the much fabled GPT-5, we were potentially going to get a new version of Claude from Anthropic, and even some treats and something interesting from Google, to say nothing of a bunch of other smaller models from the companies just one level back from the foundation model giants. And today, indeed, we got drops from OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. So we're going to do our best to go through all of this. This is all very fresh out of the gate with people's very first takes. And of course, we'll be spending a lot more time on this throughout the week. We kick off not with GPT-5. That's still forthcoming. At this point, odds-on bets are that that comes on Thursday. But instead with a release that to some is as or more significant. And that is OpenAI's two new open weight models. The two models are GPT-OSS 120B and GPT-OSS 20B. And the big blinking banner headline is that these are not.
And some people are reporting that GPT-5 might be delayed. And it's possible, because initially Sam Altman was quoted as saying that the open source models were probably going to be delayed. And then if GPT-5 is being delayed, they must have slid these out to stay, relevant. Isn't it really weird that a lot of releases happen around the same time? No, it actually isn't. Like, at least based on the past, 2.5 years. They're all trying to undercut each other, right? And, like, having a bunch of them happen like on the same day was a little weird, but having them happen within like a week or two. Remember, like the previous version of Grok, when it dropped, within a week, somebody else, I can't remember who, it might have been Google's 2.5, they dropped that within a week afterwards. They're always trying to undercut each other in the media cycle. Just goes to show that they will end testing abruptly to go to market. Yes. They cannot show shareholders they are far behind. Yes. Right? You don't want to be seen as lagging, right? Like the only reason Meta didn't get crushed post Llama 4 is because they have just such a significant amount of cash on hand, right? Like they have the money to invest in this, and Zuckerberg has basically a free hand at this point to do what he wants. Were they a smaller company, like something along the lines of OpenAI or Anthropic, they might have just been totally dusted, right? The investors might have run for the hills.
Not just some second-tier models to give developers something nice to play around with. These are actually very, very close to state-of-the-art. Sam Altman tweeted, GPT-OSS is out. We made an open model that performs at the level of O4 Mini and runs on a high-end laptop. WTF! And a smaller one that runs on a phone. Super proud of the team, big triumph of technology. Now, before we get into how OpenAI describes this model, it's worth putting this into context. It has been a very long time since OpenAI.
Oh, I don't. It's not wasted. That's the thing, right? You can't, especially from the point of view of Zuckerberg. Excuse me. From his point of view, it wasn't wasted. It's an investment, right? It's trying to build something out. Now, it might fail, but like, if you fail, that's just the opportunity to try again in another context, right? Like, if I'm trying to learn how to do something and I fail, then I have the opportunity to try again, right? Now he's operating on a different level and shit like that, but it's easy to dunk on Zuckerberg, and I will do it. But the idea that he's wasting money just because something wasn't a commercial success is not really the way to look at it. The metaverse, the VR office kind of thing, nobody wants that, right? Like, or a very niche group of people want that kind of behavior, right? Like, people will use VR in order to play games, entertain themselves, maybe work on something. What up, Anti-War Machine? But they are not interested in going to work with, a brick hanging on the front of your face. When Zoom is right there. Like, there isn't a functional improvement over Zoom to the metaverse as far as work conferencing goes. So, there's no reason for that. Now, AR is still very much on the table. You, at some point in time, those Ray-Bans are going to have AR technology built into them. They just need to get it miniaturized enough in order to fit into something comfortable to put on your face. Yeah, tech needs to shrink more.
OpenAI was actually in the business of open models. The last one that they released as an open model was all the way back at GPT-2, which, by the way, remains at this point the most downloaded text generation model of all time on Hugging Face, and by a fairly significant amount. And over the years, as OpenAI had increasingly turned away from open source, there were still people who were asking them to reconsider. Back in December of 2023, AI entrepreneur Varun Mather wrote, "Open source GPT-4 and do whatever R&D needed to ensure it can run on consumer laptops and desktops. You got
it." Okay, so putting a little in the over the ear, behind the ear section, that's not a bad idea. Do these also include, are these, what are they called? The bone vibrating, audio? $100 for clip-on sunglasses? Okay, bro. Yeah, and here we go. The standard lenses, non-prescription, or plus $150 for prescription. Again, and this is only single lens, right? Like, I'm looking at dual lens. So this is just processing. But they have a screen. What up, Ivan? Yeah. No, you're gonna see a lot of that, Anti-War Machine. Yeah, nice little heads up. Okay. Yeah, it looks neat. If you decide to go with that, you let me know.
into AI to change the world. Now, in January of this year, we got the idea that OpenAI might be shifting their stance on this. In a Reddit conversation, CEO Sam Altman said that he thought that perhaps OpenAI had been on the wrong side of history, to use his phrase, when it came to open source. Now, not coincidentally, this was in the peak of DeepSeek mania, when Chinese open source models in general had not only taken a major jump ahead of Western open source models, but were creeping up right on the heels of the closed models from the biggest foundation model companies. And so with all that in mind, developers in the AI community at large have been excitedly waiting to see what this open source model release would bring. So let's talk about how OpenAI presented these two models. GPT-OSS 20b they frame as a medium-sized open model that can run on most desktops and laptops, while its bigger sibling 120b is a large open model designed to run in data centers and on high-end desktops and laptops. One of the first things people wanted to check is what the license with this would actually be, and OpenAI led with that as one of their 4 main bullets, calling it a permissive license. They write, "These models are supported by the Apache 2.0 license, built freely without worrying about copyleft restrictions or patent risk, whether you're experimenting, customizing, or deploying commercially." Simon Willison was enthusiastic, tweeting excitedly that both had been released under a, quote, proper open source Apache 2.0 license. But were these just underperforming models designed for tinkerers and hobbyists? The short answer is absolutely not. They shared comparative benchmarks across 4 tests, including 2 competitive math tests, the AIME 2024 and 2025, as well as the MMLU, GPQA Diamond, and Humanities Last Exam, which were all reasoning and knowledge tests. On the competition math, both 20b and 120b actually beat OpenAI O3 and were just behind O4 Mini, which had been specifically designed for math. On the reasoning tests, both models were behind O3 and O4 Mini, but not by a ton. For example, the 120b model scored a 90 on the MMLU as compared to O3's 93.4, an 80.1 on the GPQA Diamond as compared to O3's 83.3, and there was a slightly bigger gap on Humanities Last Exam, scoring a 19 as opposed to a 24.9. Still, that 19 was better than O4 Mini, which got a 17.7. The point is that these models are distinctly not second tier. Matt Schumer writes, "Are you kidding me? OpenAI's new open source model is O3 level. This is going to disrupt the market in a big way." In addition to the permissive license and the benchmarks, OpenAI called out 3 other aspects of the models. Full chain of thought, giving developers the ability to access the full chain of thought for easier debugging and higher trusted model outputs. Deep customizability. OpenAI writes, "Adjust the reasoning effort to low, medium, or high, plus customize the models to adapt to your use case with full parameter fine-tuning." And the last one, and one that caught my attention, was designed for agentic tasks. Leverage powerful instruction following and tool use within the chain of thought, including web search and Python code execution. Matthew Berman honed in on this point, writing, "Excellent instruction following, function calling, web search or Python tool use, adjustable reasoning effort, and structured outputs." And it's very clear, as we'll get into in a minute, that again, far from being some hobbyist project, I think they have some real specific use cases in mind, and a big part of it is building agents. Sam Altman also wrote a longer post about OSS. He said, "GPT-OSS is a big deal. It is a state-of-the-art open weights reasoning model with strong real-world performance comparable to O4 Mini that you can run locally on your own computer or phone with the smaller size. We believe this is the best and most usable open model in the world. We're excited to make this model the result of billions of dollars of research available to the world to get AI into the hands of the most people possible."
This is a direct challenge to both Meta and the Chinese models at this point. Huge grain of salt. He is referencing OpenAI's own benchmarks. They are incentivized to showcase the best case scenario. Yes, but I also saw some benchmark from Code Forces, I believe, in the Wes Roth video. I'm not sure if they're going to be brought up here, but the Code Forces benchmarks will be outside of OpenAI's control. So yes, you are correct. As always, we need to temper our expectations until we actually have people using it and reporting back, and you know, a nice broad spectrum to draw meaningful conclusions from. But there are indications that it is at least close to as good as they say.
We believe far more good than bad will come from it. For example, GPT-OSS 120b performs about as well as O3 on challenging health issues. We have worked hard to mitigate the most serious safety issues, especially around biosecurity. GPT-OSS models perform comparably to our frontier models on internal safety benchmarks. We believe in individual empowerment. Although we believe most people will want to use a convenient service like ChatGPT, people should be able to directly control and modify their own AI when they need to. And the privacy benefits are obvious. As part of this, we're quite hopeful that this release will enable new kinds of research and the creation of new kinds of products. We expect a meaningful uptick in the rate of innovation in our field, and for many more people to do important work than we're able to before. OpenAI's mission is to ensure AGI that benefits all of humanity. To that end, we are excited for the world to be building on an open AI stack created in the United States based on democratic values, available for free to all and for wide benefit.
Right there. That's a direct challenge to the Chinese models, right? Without saying it. United States, democratic values, etc.
Now, there is a lot to unpack in there. If you listen to my episode about the White House's AI action plan, you will have heard me talking about the fact that one of the things that made that document so interesting is that while a lot of foreign policy in the United States right now involves withdrawing from our traditional role in the world, the AI action plan basically made it a prerogative of the US government to use open source AI as a sort of soft power. That sort of theme isn't new for Sam.
I'm not validating that, Hydrant. I'm just saying that those are the words that they use when they're challenging, China, right? Like that whole, democratic values versus Chinese Communist Party kind of shenanigans.
Altman. But with this model and the narrative around its release, they're definitely leaning all the way into that. When it comes to these safety and risk issues, Kai from OpenAI added a few more details. They tweeted, "Open weights can't go back in the box. Before permanently releasing GPT-OSS models into the ecosystem, we estimated marginal frontier risk by deliberately eliciting bio and cyber capabilities via malicious fine-tuning. While MFT improves performance, GPT-OSS stays below the high threshold in OpenAI's preparedness framework. These findings contributed towards the decision to release these models for the world to use." Alongside the release, they shared a paper called Estimating Worst-Case Frontier Risks of Open-Weight LLMs. But what about what these models are actually useful for? Why is it important, if you have access to the closed models, that OpenAI has now made these near state-of-the-art models available in this open way? The team at Every spent a little time with the models before their release, and here's what they had to say about them. They write, "I can think of a few ways right off the bat where we're going to start experimenting with these models internally. First, Every has a consulting practice with hedge funds and private equity firms that are bound by significant privacy and security regulations. I imagine this is going to be immediately interesting for these businesses because they can now run the models themselves in the security of their own data centers. Previously, they may have wanted to use open-weight models like Kimi K2 or Quen, but for firms with strict regulatory or compliance requirements, there's no better way to make your head of IT break out in hives than to try to install Chinese-developed AI in your secure private cloud."
Again, these are a direct challenge to the Chinese models. I think that's clear at this point.
OpenAI's OSS series models boast the same open-weight flexibility and security benefits without the geopolitical drama. Every also points out that even beyond big strategic risk, there are a lot of companies that just don't want to send their information to anyone's cloud. They write, "Every has a suite of Mac apps that could use these models to offer AI features with a better security and privacy profile. Sparkle, our AI file organizer, sends your file names to OpenAI's cloud, a no-go for security-conscious users. Similarly, Monologue, our AI dictation app currently in beta, sends your dictation transcript to the cloud for processing. We've experimented with on-device processing for both of these apps, but speed and reliability haven't been good enough to release it." And I think that the point here is that in addition to just the principle of the thing, and giving companies and users the choice of how they want to toggle their security and privacy settings, there are actually very specific use cases in industries where this might matter significantly. Basically, the more regulated an industry is, and the more complex it is, the more likely to want custom solutions they're going to be. We see this all the time at Superintelligent when it comes to how they're thinking about agents. I don't think it's an accident that OpenAI is really honing in on how good at agentic capabilities like tool calling these models are, because I think that they anticipate that a lot of the usage is going to be in the form of privacy and security conscious enterprises using these models to build their own custom agentics. Harrison Chase and the team of Langchain already started writing about how to use GPT-OSS for this type of agentic use case. Chase wrote, "Deep agents require good tool calling capabilities, something that OpenAI's new open source model is pretty good at." And for companies that are doing a lot of that usage, there is another part of this story which is also equally compelling, which is the cost profile. Matt Schumer again writes that the pricing when delivered through Grok is 91% cheaper than O3.
This is Grok with a Q, not Grok with a K. Grok with a Q. It appears to be, as much as anyone can be, the good Grok.
O3's pricing. He continues, because of this, you can likely use this model in much more comprehensive chains and agents to eke out more performance than O3 dollar for dollar. Example, running 5 OpenAI OSS model generations in parallel and then selecting the best is still way cheaper than just one O3 query. Grok's head of partnerships, Jacob Lowenstein, wrote, Intern accidentally priced OpenAI GPT-OSS at 1/100th of Anthropic. Bad intern, but what's done is done. Now go build. Cerebrus writes, OpenAI GPT-OSS.
There have been 2 of them for some time. I don't know who came first.
120B is live on Cerebrus. 3,000 tokens per second, the fastest OpenAI model on record. The point being that...
And Cerebrus is the really fast inference people.
With these models...
Though Grok is also really fast inference. Grok with a Q.
You have something that is not only available with a privacy and security profile that was not previously possible, but at near state-of-the-art and for a fraction of the price, and at significant speed. I'm sure we'll be spending a lot more time on these open source models and how people are using them in the weeks to come, but this is just one of 3 announcements that I wanted to speak to in today's show. Stephen Heidel, who works on the API OpenAI, wrote,
What up, Nemesis?
Also congrats.
Not that Grok. They're not talking about that Grok. They're talking about this Grok. Right? Grok with a Q. And like Orange Stellar Wingman. How good are the new open AI open source models? Gotta log in? Come on, man. I'm trying to demonstrate your product to chat and you're... Well, it's too late now. I have to do it again. Right? We got to re-ask the question because they didn't get to see how fast your product was. That's pretty fast, right? The previous one was 375 tokens per second, right? And you can look and get the the speed insights. So, yeah, Grok is a good tool. The good Grok, not the bad Grok. Not Mecha Hitler.
To my friends at Anthropic on the release of Opus 4.1 today. Just before the OpenAI announcement, Anthropic tweeted, Today we're releasing Claude Opus 4.1, an upgrade to Claude Opus 4 on agentic tasks, real-world coding, and reasoning. And the big story here is software engineering. On the Sweetbench verified test, Opus 4.1 scored a 74.5% as compared to Opus 4's 72.5% and Sonnet 3.7's 62.3%. The quote that everyone has been grabbing from their announcement post is this one. Windsurf reports Opus 4.1 delivers a 1 standard deviation improvement over Opus 4 on their junior developer benchmark, showing roughly the same performance leap as the jump from Sonnet 3.7 to Sonnet 4. Menlo's DDDoS writes, Anthropic just dropped Opus 4.1, the best coding model in the world. State-of-the-art 74.5% on the Sweetbench, surpassing both Gemini 2.5 Pro and OpenAI O3. This is the product right now to use. Chubby points out, however, that maybe the thing to really focus on is the comment that follows the announcement post. We plan to release substantially larger improvements to our models in the coming weeks. That's echoed, by the way, in their announcement blog post. Now, for some, it feels like that was the main point. Newform AI's Alek Velikhanov said, "Is this it? Opus 4.1 feels like a rushed release to get ahead of GPT-5. Look at how it struggles with making a UI that Horizon, assumed GPT-5, nailed in a single shot." Now, this has been out for less than 2 hours at the time of recording, so we haven't really gotten a chance to see a ton of people playing around with it yet. But there's certainly no doubt that the timing is not a coincidence, and that part of this is the competitive pressure to always be at the state of the art. We haven't gotten GPT-5 yet, but we have heard tons of rumors that it is leagues better in coding than any previous OpenAI model, and people have had tons of success with the assumed tester models like the codenamed Horizon, which could theoretically threaten Anthropic's crown at the top of the coding heap. Much respected Simon Willison said,
China, let's wait till the end of August, right?
"My favorite thing about this model is the version number. Treating this as a 0.1 version increment looks like it's an accurate depiction of the model's capabilities." Basically, he's saying that yes, it is a modest improvement, but an improvement nonetheless, and one that is appropriately pitched. Now, the other new model that I'm really excited about that was announced today is Google's Genie 3. This they're calling the most advanced.
Someone, I can't remember who, I apologize, brought us this video yesterday regarding Horizon, which may be GPT-5, and so we're going to watch it today.
2 new anonymous models just dropped, and they're really, really good. I've been keeping an eye on the new Horizon series that popped up on OpenRouter over the last few days, and I have been absolutely blown away with them. I took some time today to really sit down and try the models out for various different things, and I've been floored with what they're capable of, especially when it comes to UI and design. So quick test, I asked for a bunch of different models to generate UI for a fake image studio app, just mock UI stuff in Next.js. And this is what it looked like with Claude 4 Opus, the current state-of-the-art, the best, most expensive option that you have from Anthropic. In comparison, here is the Horizon Alpha generation. These are not close. The Horizon Alpha one is significantly better. But as I mentioned, there isn't one model, there's 2. Here's the one from Horizon Beta. Yes, really. I cannot believe how...
Anonymous models would be models released without saying who the company behind it is, right? This has happened on previous releases where they will test out different models, like Google did a bunch of them. OpenAI has done it prior to all their releases. Just at some point in time, you have to get stuff into users' hands and see how they react to it, right? Like, and how are they going to try to mess with it and everything else. And rather than tie it directly to the name of the model, they give them little code names. So if it turns to a shit show, they have plausible deniability.
How good these models are at UI generation. I have no idea what they are, though. I have dug deep into the details. I have a lot of theories. I have a lot of things that I've been...
Right, no, the flux has nothing to do with what we're seeing. This is the UI that was designed by Horizon. The flux is the model used to create the image within the UI. But I don't even know that this is like the real flux. He said he was doing mock-ups, right? And the difference between that UI and the previous one. Yeah.
Been impressed with a lot of hacks to get the stuff working in Cursor and so much more to go over. Even though these models are currently available for free on OpenRouter, I have had to spend a lot of money testing against other models, as well as a ton of my spare time today on a Saturday. So someone's got to cover these bills. We're going to do a quick word from today's sponsor, and then I'll dive into all the nitty-gritty details on the new Horizon Anonymous models. My team's been writing more code than ever, which is great, except for the fact that we're now waiting for builds more than ever. Well, we were until we checked out today's sponsor, Depot. Not only will these guys save you time on your builds, they'll save you a ton of money in the process too. It's super easy to integrate. If you're already using GitHub Actions, Depot will probably be a drop-in replacement with one line of code changed in your GitHub Action definition. Tons of other companies already made the move, including PostHog, not just for their CI, but more importantly for their Docker image builds, because they are so much faster. Seriously though, the PostHog Docker build dropped by 41x when they moved to Depot. from over 3 hours to under 5 minutes. You've probably all experienced how much faster CI builds are on your computer than they are on the server. That is, unless you're using Depot. Seriously, I've never seen this before. 20 minutes for a build on the laptop, 5 minutes for the build on Depot. That's funny to me. I'm so used to it being the opposite. Their compute's way faster, their networking's way faster, they have no restrictions on concurrency, and it's all half the price of GitHub Actions. Yes, really. It's kind of insane. If you're tired of waiting on builds, check them out today at soydev.link/depot. So the first question you almost certainly have is, what the hell are these models? Who is Horizon? As I mentioned at the start, these are anonymous models that were dropped exclusively through OpenRouter. So if you go to OpenRouter, which is an awesome way to route traffic across various different models, we use it a ton for T3 chat, you'll see this new Horizon beta model that's currently available on the site. There was also a Horizon Alpha model that I managed to run a couple tests in before it disappeared. It's no longer available. It was fun at the time. I got some tests, we'll cover what it did, but Horizon Beta is still currently available. That said, we don't know who is hosting it, your data will be trained on when you use it, and we also don't know when it's going to go away. So if you want to try it, now's the time to go try it, because in a very, very short amount of time, this probably won't be available anymore. And if you want to try it in a chat interface, the best one in the world has it available, T3 Chat. We put a lot of work into building this. You can see here we already support the Horizon Alpha and Beta models, as well as every other model you would reasonably.
Almost certainly no download option nemesis. These are, you are doing literally beta testing on their models. And if this turns out to be GPT-5, then that also would make sense.
Want to try. And while $8 a month is cheap, these models are free. I would put them in the free tier, but we have a rate limit that will be hit almost immediately if we do. So instead, we're going to give you a discount code. If you haven't already subscribed to T3 Chat in the past and you want to give these models a shot, you can subscribe right now using the coupon code Horizon at checkout to get your first month for just $1. As I mentioned before, I've been playing with these models a ton, and one of the first tests I like to do is asking the model about skateboarding. And from asking this model about the history of the 360 flip, I was able to get a good idea of how it speaks and works, and more importantly, the fact that it isn't a reasoning model. You'll see when I run with either Horizon Alpha or Beta, there is no reasoning period, there is no hidden reasoning going on either, because it starts responding almost instantaneously. I just sent, and now we're getting a response generating really fast. I actually turned on stats for nerds on T3 Chat, which is a super handy setting to see how fast a generation actually came through. And you'll see here that these models are between like 90 and 125 tokens per second for most generations. This one was like 108. This one.
And this should give you some context for if you're not familiar. Again, the 375 tokens per second on Grok's interface, and you have your choice, right? Like when you open this up, you can pick the model that you want to use. You want to use Gwen, you want to use Gemma. They're all open source models. And then down here you've got your OpenAI open source models as well. Here's Kimmy, right? Like you do have some options available to you. Excuse me. I don't know how much. Oh, it varies on the thing. So 10 cents per million tokens on the OpenAI one. And you can get started for free.
Was around 92. Really fast models. I've been trying to figure out where these models came from, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. One of the most common ones is to just ask. If you ask Horizon Alpha or Beta, what model is it and who trained it, our system prompt is going to tell it to use the info that we provided. So on T3 Chat, it's not going to be a perfect answer. It's going to be the one that is coaxed by our system prompt. When you ask it directly using something with less of a system prompt, what are you? Who trained you? Horizon Alpha seems to think it's an OpenAI model. Horizon Beta just says it's Horizon Beta from an unknown provider, doesn't have any details. This is a very interesting set of responses, which you would think means, oh, obviously this is OpenAI. I'm not so sure about that, actually, because in the past, when you ask certain models, like, DeepSeek models, what provider they came from, they would respond with OpenAI because they were trained on data that was generated by OpenAI. So this doesn't actually give us any real information. And even more interesting news, people have been analyzing the tokenization from the model, which means how it breaks up the text into different tokens that are used to be processed. OpenAI has changed the way they do tokenization a few times throughout their history, but it's like once every couple generations. And you'll see here that GPT-4o, 4.1 mini, and Nano all make this input the exact same number of tokens. But this new Horizon Alpha model has one less token based on this particularly weird, noisy input. So that difference there is very, very interesting, in particular because Qwen models also detected it as 334 tokens. So this very well could be a Qwen model. I'm not so sure it is, though, just from various other things I've been testing and playing around with. But all of the signs right now point to it being a bit hard to know what model it is. So yeah, anybody who's guaranteeing that this is like GPT-5 or the new OpenAI open model, or maybe this is the new Claude 5 or something, no one actually knows what model this is. We can't know what model this is, but I do know this model is really, really good. From absolutely destroying the ball test, like one of the best hexagon ball demos I've seen, this is a full like real web app that was done in one prompt that gives you a ton of different customization and settings and looks really good as a web app. Very impressed with this. Flavia did a bunch of different comparisons that were interesting, showing with Horizon Alpha and Beta how weirdly good it is at the Pelican test. The Pelican test is telling an AI model to make an SVG of a pelican riding a bicycle. It's a very interesting test because it needs a lot of spatial awareness, capability with the weird quirks within SVGs, and the ability to make a bird that's kind of strange, a pelican, because it has weird characteristics. Pelicans are weird birds. And if you compare Horizon Alpha's result here to other models, even reasoning models, it's actually performing quite well. It's one of the best pelicans we've seen to date. It seems really good at SVGs in general. This is what happens when you tell it to generate R2-D2, C-3PO, and a couple other things from Star Wars. So it's good at SVGs in a way I haven't personally seen. But the thing it really excels at is styling. These two examples I made with Horizon Alpha and Beta are just blowing me away in the quality of the output. I made these using Cursor, of course, but you'll see this was not as smooth to generate as it might seem. I added the model with a couple hacks in Cursor. I have Cursor thinking it's an OpenAI model, but then I give it a different endpoint to send the requests to. There's a little guide on the OpenRouter site on how to do this. Funny enough for Kimmy, but I'm using it for these models instead, and it's working okay. I'll quickly demo what I'm talking about here by pasting the same prompt.
What up,
This
Panda
app's
Monkey?
going to be an image generation studio using various AI models to turn prompts into images. Design a mocked version. It should be dark mode. Focus on making it beautiful. So when I give this to Horizon Alpha, the first thing it does... Oh, it's actually behaving differently this time. Okay, the first couple times I tried this, it gave me a to-do list at the top, like every time. It would make this to-do list, it would generate most of the UI, and then I would get this error. We're having trouble connecting to the model provider. It would tell me to turn off my MCP servers, so I did, and then after turning off said MCP servers, I continued to have the same problem. You'll also notice that it kind of just goes right into it, because again, it's not a reasoning model. It seems like it was a mistake that it had reasoning on because they turned it off almost immediately, but there was a brief moment where reasoning was working with alpha, which means it has the capability of doing both. Most of the tests you've been seeing and most of the characteristics that we've been sharing are in the non-reasoning version because it was only able to reason for like 30 minutes due to some...
So, possibly, if this is GPT-5 and possibly, Sam Altman has been talking about getting rid of the model selector as a thing, then possibly we're looking at a model that can choose whether or not it should be reasoning based on the request of the user. Possibly.
Error on the implementation side. Cool, this time it didn't give me any errors. That's nice. It's a fresh generation, so I might as well see how it came out, right? Okay, something went really wrong in Cursor there, but this is what it generated with that attempt. Still looks significantly better than what I was seeing from a lot of the other models that I've been trying. I'm going to go back and try this once more because I want you guys to see the weirdness I've been dealing with. Try it again. This time I'm going to do Horizon Beta because that's the one that seems to be more blessed at the moment. We're going to try this again with Beta. And there we go. The first thing it does is makes a to-do list. And I haven't seen any of the other models do this as a first step inside of Cursor. This is a behavior I've seen in stuff like Claude Code, but I've never seen Cursor do it, which is weird that it has special behaviors. But these are all just tools that are provided to the models by Cursor. It just seems like it wants to use that tool first. as I mentioned before, it is very quick to actually do the generation, but then it throws an error almost immediately. So it's not going to go through the rest of that to-do list, but it is going to make a good starting point. And if we go back once more, stunning. It's really good at gradients. This is a thing I've not seen other models do well. Again, for comparison, if we compare to the Kimi K2 version that I did, it has a nice gradient, but it uses like the annoying Tailwind blue slate colors too much. Just don't dig that. Then I did one with Claude 4 Sonnet, and it looks like it was done with Claude 4 Sonnet. Lots of rounded corners, lots of big space and padding between things. It's fine, but I wouldn't recommend this.
Fine.
Then we had the Claude 4 Opus version, which was expensive to generate. I got a warning in Cursor that I was going to be going over my limits for the month very soon if I keep using it. Into this super ugly, the signature Claude button. I almost want to like post a screenshot of this and be like, you know, it was made with Claude if, when it has this particular like purple to red or pinkish pattern, those cringy gradients are very much a Claude special. And then we have the first Horizon Alpha version I did with a much, much better gradient. Even on here, you can see the generate buttons gradient goes like top left to bottom right. And even though the colors are roughly the same, it looks significantly better. It also, though the colors are roughly the same, it
tried to do the 3-star AI symbol. So good effort.
Significantly better. It just has more taste. And then the Horizon Beta version is the only one I did that didn't go with the pink and purple for some reason. It went with blue and green. And it also looks great. The tasteful like gradient back blur droplet things just give it presence in a way it didn't have before. And all of these are the exact same prompts starting from the exact same starting point. So to have that level of quality difference is kind of insane. I'm genuinely really impressed with it. But I still want to figure out what this model is, so let's go through some more stuff. I mentioned before that I asked it some questions about skateboarding, and I actually got a pretty good answer when I asked it about the history of the 360 flip, which is one of my favorite tricks.
Where are the hallucinations? Ed Zitron told me there would be hallucinations.
One of my favorite things to check for when I ask about this is whether or not Jason Lee comes up, because he's the person who really popularized the trick. In a lot of historical accounts of skateboarding, Jason Lee gets skipped over a bit more than he should be, but he really is the one who brought this trick to the streets and made it as popular as it is, and to this day still is the best 360 flip. So making sure he comes up is a really fun test. When you compare to other models like, I don't know, Kimi K2, the likelihood somebody like him comes up is a lot lower. So here it's giving credit to Nadas and Mark Gonzalez, neither of which really did 360 flips. The two of them were really close with Jason Lee, who was the one who popularized it with them. So weird to see him come up later after those two. That's just not the best retelling. The Chinese models have historically struggled a lot with skateboarding stuff. Also, citing the 2021 Olympics with a trick that didn't happen as cementing the trick's global status is hilarious. The 360 flip is the most signature skate trick other than the kickflip. So yeah, Chinese.
So those are hallucinations in the Kimi model, I guess?
These models are not good at this. So let's compare to some of the other models I wanted to check quick. Here is the same prompt given to GPT 4.1, and you'll notice that the style of it is actually very similar. The way it breaks down the origins, the early propagation, refinements and iconic executions, variations and branches. We'll just go through these in order. Origins is the same on both. Origins and innovations versus origins. Bullet points immediately after. Early propagation versus early appearances. Similar. Refinements and iconic executions. Popularization is replacing that part. Same difference. Modern era, variations and branches. So it stops being as one-to-one, but the formatting and the way it's organized feels very similar. If we compare that to 04 Mini, for example, it's very different. We get this numbered list with sub-bullet points that actually vary in the type of bullets. It's not the best formatted thing I've ever seen, and it's different. And of course, it also had reasoning too. This is much more clinical. It seems like Horizon is a little less so. It's a little friendlier to talk to. That could just be the difference with reasoning. Traditionally, reasoning models are not the most fun to interact with, but they are much smarter and get better answers to questions. The outputs just tend to be more clinical. Compare that with Claude 4 Sonnet. I intentionally use Claude 4 Sonnet without reasoning to make it a more one-to-one comparison. Very different in how it's structured. Then we have Horizon Alpha, which is the other version of the Horizon model. Again, very, very similar to GPT 4.1 as well as to Horizon Beta. Here it is again with Horizon Alpha, same difference. And since the theory was Quen, let's try it with some of the Quen models. We'll try the Quen 3 32 bill. Why not? This one's a reasoning model. Origins and development, cultural impact, key takeaways. Interesting. So this came out quite a bit different. It also came out quite a bit faster, but that's largely because we're using Grok with a Q for the inference provider for all of this. Came out really good, though.
Grok with a Q. Grok with a Q.
To figure out what this model is, so let's go through some more stuff. I mentioned before that I asked it some questions about skateboarding, and I actually got a pretty good answer when I asked it about the history of the 360 flip, which is one of my favorite tricks.
Where are the hallucinations? Ed Zitron told me there would be hallucinations.
.360 flips widely attributed to Mike Vallely. No, it is fucking not. That's a lie. So again, the Chinese models are not good about the history of skateboarding. That's actually why I made a new benchmark, Skate Bench, where I compare how good...
I mean, fair, right? Like, your benchmark is just as valid as a lot of the other benchmarks. It's like, what's important to you? And apparently 03 Pro and 03 are the models to go for if you want information about skateboarding. And the Chinese models they're not good at it. They're, just don't ask them about skateboarding in Tiananmen Square.
Different models are at naming skate tricks when given a description. And you'll notice that the Chinese models tend to get basically a 0 on this test, versus the OpenAI 03 and 03 Pro models, which get a really, really good score. I didn't add the numbers for Horizon Alpha and Beta to this, but I did run it, and they scored around a 20%. So somewhere between Grok 3 Mini and GPT-4o is roughly where they fell. So let's just put down what we know so far. They're anonymous models, so we don't actually have official answers as to where they came from. The tokenization matches Quen, which is a weird detail, but worth noting.
True, Ponder Monkey.
They're non-reasoning models, but Alpha very briefly had reasoning, likely as an error. Obviously, the model underneath can support it, or that error wouldn't have happened, but the fact that they are putting it out there as a non-reasoning model is something that we should absolutely take note of, as well as the fact that it briefly was able to do reasoning due to what was certainly a bug. It's really good at UI, as well as things like SVGs, etc. It's pretty good at tool calls. It's hard to know for sure because nobody's really run big tool calling benchmarks. I ran them against Snitchbench and they performed pretty well.
Yeah, I agree, Nemesis. Like, I think that's why I vibe with Gemini so much, is its vision model is top tier, right? Like, it knows what it's looking at. It is capable of watching YouTube videos and actually watching the video. So yeah.
For that, they didn't snitch almost at all. I believe it was like 10% on my first test for the boldly prompt and 0% for the tamely prompt. Pretty good results there. I didn't save them because I was testing a lot of different things and lost the results. And I can't test again because Alpha is now getting rate limited really hard. And I don't want to burn through my rate limits when users could be using T3 chat instead. Snitchbench is a very hungry benchmark in terms of token utilization, as well as chances that you get warnings from the LLM providers that you are doing things that might be illegal, because that's the point of the benchmark. Anyways, it really likes to plan. So when given tools for planning, things like a to-do list tool, it will use that aggressively really early in its process. It likes to describe what it's doing and why as well. It's pretty fast. I'm not going to say really fast.
And again, I'm not a coder, but I'm given to understand that like having a plan when you're using one of these coding models is definitely the way to go, right? Like requirements files and just how everything should go together. In the end, you will need a vision-enabled model to operate, not code a UI, and that is the road. Yes.
Fast, because we don't know how it will perform when it's on real info and provided, but it's around 125 tokens per second. You know what? I'm more comfortable saying it's around 110. That's about the average for my testing so far. Funny enough, it seems like the model isn't benching too great on a lot of different benchmarks. That might be because it's a reasoning model but isn't given the access to the reasoning. It might be that the model is really small. It could be a lot of different things. There's a lot of theorization that this is a small model from OpenAI. I don't know if I buy that just because it's weird. This model is different and very, very interesting. Still not very good at math. As you see here, it performs worse than Llama 4 Maverick and comically worse than something like O3 Mini High, much less O4 Mini. So yeah, not great performance on a lot of different benchmarks. But I do honestly think we are nearing the end of the value of these types of benchmarks because they don't tend to reflect my experience in real life. Like if we go to artificial analysis, for example, you'll see that Claude 4 Opus thinking performs worse than Gemini 2.5 Flash reasoning. And if you've used either of those models for writing code for actual work, you know obviously both Sonnet and Opus are significantly better for writing code than anything performing better than them on these tests. And even if we look down to the live code benchmark, you'll see supposedly that on live code bench, Claude 4 Sonnet and Opus both perform significantly worse than a ton of other things, which just doesn't line up with my IRL experience. You can see similar results in things like SciCode, where Claude 4 models just don't perform as well as O4 Mini and Grok. But that's not reality. These are benchmarks, and these benchmarks seem to not really show how good these models are in day-to-day usage. And my honest guess is that if they put Horizon on these benchmarks, it would perform even worse by the numbers. But again, from my lived experience using it and playing with it, the only issue I have is that it fails after the first to-do is completed, because again, there's something up with how the open router hack I'm doing in Cursor is working. But it's still doing a really good job, and the results that I'm getting are just fucking stunning. Like, I can't get over how good these two options look. I've been working on a new image generation studio on the side. That's why I thought of this. I was using it as a test to see how well the model could generate.
I mean, these UIs are comparable to the original Leonardo UI, right? It's significantly transformed since then, but it was very familiar to me when I saw this. What up, Ben? Top of the morning? Top of the morning.
Things that look good for this type of product, and both of them did significantly better than anything I've even made by hand myself. One other thing of note is that there are other places where anonymous models appear to be dropping right now. There's currently a model live on Ella Marina called Lobster. We don't actually know what it is. Lasan, who was doing these tests,
Something you want to tell us, old lobster? You up to something?
claims that it's GPT-5. I don't think so. More importantly, it seems from how it's doing things to be very similar to the Horizon models that we're currently playing with. The generation we're looking at here is not the one generated by Lobster. This is one that was generated by Grok 4, which is supposedly the smartest and best model. And in comparison, here's the one that was generated by Lobster. Think we can agree it's a little bit better?
God damn, dude. I don't like. That's cool looking.
Thing that makes me so sure it's the same model is the way it's doing the corner faded dot style gradient, where we have the blue on the bottom right and the purple on the top left, really faded out in the background. That seems to be a signature thing that this model likes to do. You can see a very similar thing here with the blue fade on the top and the green one on the bottom, and even here with the purple light fade at the top there for this very blacked out UI. It seems like a style that exists pretty deeply baked into the model. I am giving it Tailwind, so it is doing this generation with Tailwind, but it looks really good. Like I would ship this or tidy it very slightly and ship it soon after. I'm blown away. So likely the same model as Lobster. What other key points? It's free for now. It will disappear soon, so try it ASAP. They are likely training on your data. No one gives out something this good for free. They want to see the reception of what they built, whoever built.
Same, Michael, right? Like, we're still at the point where you have to know enough about coding in order to know the right questions to ask, right? And like that. But again, I will point to Liz and the multiverse school there is apparently in one of these, like this. First of all, this UI here is kind of wild, right? But is it in here? Yeah, this is this is a custom GPT that Liz made that allegedly teaches you how to or at least takes you through 7 modern coding languages in 7 weeks. So again, I don't know how good this is. I haven't used it, but people have been saying nice things about it to Liz, and I have faith that Liz is trying to do their best for the community.
They put it up on OpenRouter for free the way they did so that people like us would try it, play with it, see what it does well, see what it does poorly, share our experience, and they can look at the inputs and outputs and see what it is and isn't doing well. That's why we went from alpha to beta so quickly. They're clearly making adjustments throughout. There are some theories that the alpha version was the low param version, like 20 bill, and the beta version is the higher 120 bill version. But again, we don't know for sure. We don't know much of anything at all because we are just hitting a random API endpoint and getting back content that is higher quality than we've ever seen before. Hypothetically speaking, this could be one dude sitting in a room typing out the responses really quickly for all we know. That said, we have to be realistic, and realistically speaking, these outputs are way too good to be some random bullshit. This is probably a major lab, probably testing something that will be dropping in the near future, and I'm blown away with it. I highly recommend playing with this model. I do not recommend mucking up your cursor setup to do it. So if you can find other AI code gen tools that work well with an OpenRouter key, try those out because it'll probably be less jank and get you some really good results. I honestly think the easiest way to test out this model and its capabilities is going to be T3 chat. Told it to respond with a standard HTML body, don't include JS or CSS, use Tailwind, wrap the output in an HTML code block using 3 backticks in Markdown format. So now it's given me
like all that, right? Like he asked very specific requirements of the model, and I don't even know what a bunch of those things mean. What up, one guy? So, like, we're still at that point. But, again, the nice thing about using an AI tool is that, like, I could take his prompt and put it into Gemini and saying, what's going on with this here, right? Like, and Gemini would break it down for me and like that. So it's not completely out of reach. It's just you're going to make mistakes the farther away you are from having like coding knowledge and experience. Well, I hope that works out for you, one guy. Like, you know, don't push yourself too hard, all right?
this output. It's still generating. It's very fast, but there's a lot of text that it has to generate. And then I just copy paste it into the Tailwind playground when it's ready. That time was a bit slower. The previous run, it was able to hit like 160 tokens per second. This time it was only 80. Clearly their infra is getting hammered right now. Hop back over to the playground. Huh. That looks really good. It's using T3 because that's in the system prompt for like my app. Yeah. Not bad. It's only this one like nice looking homepage. And it didn't handle dark versus light mode well here. I think it's trying to do dark mode, but since it doesn't have the ability to edit the standard CSS, it can't set a page background color. So instead, this is what we get. Still really good, and you can get a feel for how good it is at doing these types of things. I'm impressed as hell. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I overhyping this random anonymous model, or is it actually really good? At the very least, I can tell that next week's going to be a very exciting week with all of these crazy drops happening. There is no...
It's just how much his pictures all look like.
no way that this isn't some crazy thing that we're going to see a lot more about very, very soon. Hope you appreciate the early heads up, and I hope you get a chance to play with it. If you haven't yet, let me know what y'all think, and until next time.
All right. That was pretty good. All right. Shifting gears. If buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing, according to this.
Peace, nerds.
The 2010s were the golden age of piracy. BitTorrent accounted for 1/3 of all internet traffic. LimeWire had more monthly users than Facebook, and the Pirate Bay was the only video store in town where you were sure to find what you were looking for. Hypothetically, of course. The world was slowly switching from physical to digital media, and even people who weren't particularly tech-savvy realized that digital goods could be replaced endlessly with practically zero marginal cost. At its peak, 95% of all music downloads were pirated because it had become cheaper and, above all else, an easier way to fill up large digital libraries that were being made possible by cheap digital storage. But then, it just stopped. Since 2012, the internet has gotten faster, storage has gotten cheaper, and people have become more comfortable with computers, which should have just accelerated a growth trend. But it didn't. Since 2015, peer-to-peer file sharing has collapsed in popularity, and you might think you already know why. Streaming services like Spotify and Netflix were just a better, easier, and safer way to access content. And now, as these services have become markedly worse and simultaneously more expensive, piracy is making a comeback. It seems pretty simple, right? The only problem is that's not the whole story. Realistically, these companies knew this day would come. It was just really important that they could pretend it wouldn't.
For a lot of people, they've decided it's time to cut back.
But legitimately, it might be time to cancel some subscriptions, and I'm probably gonna have to cancel some.
Some of them I'm not using, and it's just wasting money.
There's so many of these, it's hard to keep track.
At that point, that's an adversarial relationship. I don't want to pay people to enter adversarial relationships.
We aim, as I said, for this business to be a growth business for the company with margins that our shareholders will feel good about.
So what really made piracy go away and what's really bringing it back might sound simple, but there's actually a bit more going on. First and foremost, the majority of people actually would like to acquire their media legally as long as it was easy and not ridiculously expensive. Most reasonable people understand that it costs time and money to produce a song, film a movie, or develop a video game, and the people involved in these projects do need to be compensated or else they are just not going to make them. Even people who frequent the high seas, so to speak, know this better than anybody else. A survey coming out of Australia at the peak of online piracy found that people who pirated content were actually more likely to pay for it if it was available. In a finding that really ages the study, online pirates were far more likely to pay for movies and music through iTunes or QuickFix. This was because people who pirated content were just more likely to consume content overall, and most of them would only make the trip to the Bay if they couldn't find what they were looking for more legitimately. So there were two things that changed after 2013. Sure, there were a few high-profile crackdowns on some of these sites, but even the regulators themselves knew they were just playing a game of whack-a-mole. One of the most downloaded files on the Pirate Bay was the Pirate Bay, a complete copy of the site with all of the addresses that could be set up by basically anybody with some basic server hardware in the event that the authorities took down the original site. But then came along the streaming sites that, thanks to faster internet speeds, could let users watch content on demand without granting them direct access to digital files which could then be copied and shared illegally. The big thing was that these options were just so easy compared to piracy, and so cheap compared to buying songs or movies one by one that it just didn't really make sense to bother with anything else. Nowadays, that's clearly changed. There are dozens of streaming services that are each getting more and more expensive every year. The movies and shows that you watch are being split up over different providers. The services themselves are getting worse by introducing ads and pushing less relevant content. And on top of all of that, it's just not that easy anymore. Even individual TV shows have certain seasons split up over different streaming services, and the first step in sitting down to watch a movie these days is to Google what streaming service has the 1984 release of Gremlins, and if you're unlucky, what streaming service plus what VPN combo will get you the movie you want to watch. If you're already going through all that effort, it gets really tempting to just replace streaming services with your port of choice, because in most cases, it will just be easier. So yeah, streaming services were cheap and easy, which killed the need for piracy. But then they slowly became expensive and terrible, which brought it back. Pretty straightforward, right? Wrong. It's easy to write this whole thing off as just dumb companies being needlessly greedy to their own peril. And while that's definitely part of the problem, there is a lot more to it than that. Music streaming by comparison is decent. There are multiple services, but almost all of them have almost all of the music that you would possibly be looking for. As a result, nobody really bothers to pirate songs anymore, which is particularly impressive when you remember that just 15 years ago, 95% of music was being downloaded illegally. Artists have not been thrilled about the lower revenue they have got from streaming versus physical album sales, but most of them still go along with it because even a small share of something is better than most of their music being accessed for free. This raises a potentially unpopular idea, that it might not be streaming that's broken, it might be the movie industry that's broken. The golden age of streaming was never going to last because it was never meant to last. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why piracy is really making a comeback. This video was made possible by iScanner. I was sorting through some old receipts for tax season, trying to remember which ones I still needed to file. And of course, one of the important ones had coffee stains all over it. The text was barely readable. Classic me. That's why I started using iScanner. I just scanned the receipt and it used AI to clean everything up. It straightened the page, fixed the lighting, and even removed the worst of the stains. I could finally read the numbers again, and drop the PDF.
This is an ad.
Straight into my records. Since then, it's kind of become my go-to. Whenever I'm scanning documents, notes, receipts, or even something my dog got his teeth on, iScanner makes it super easy to salvage whatever's left and turn it into something useful. It's fast, it works across all my devices, and the free version actually does what I need, including...
It has a free version, and that's actually pretty cool. Maybe they're born with it, maybe it's capitalism.
Editing, signatures, and storing everything in one place. Check it out with the link below, and make your paperwork just a little less painful. Netflix is the most dominant movie and TV streaming service in the world. It has over 300 million paying subscribers, and unlike a lot of its competitors, it's actually profitable. But from its very first days of online streaming, they knew they would eventually lose people back to piracy. They just really didn't care. And to see why, I'm sorry, but you are going to have to look at some financials. Last year, it made $8.7 billion in net income after taxes, which is extremely impressive, but it still makes it hard to justify the valuation of more than $500 billion. At that rate, shareholders would need 57 years for their investment to pay off, which is not a reasonable bet for a company in an industry that has only been dominant for a decade. 57 years ago, watching a movie looked like this. And in another 57 years from now, it's highly unlikely that we will still be watching movies through the current selection of streaming services. Now, most investors in this company aren't dumb. They know that Netflix can't make their money back with its current structure. What they are banking on is being able to offer a cheaper service that they can charge more for in order to fatten up those margins.
Let's not talk about my margins, by the way. Being nice and fat, that's a nice shirt. Do they make it for men?
Anyway, cutting content, raising prices, and pushing strange features like mobile games within the app are not some surprise new rollout. They are part of a development plan that the company knew it would have to implement since it started offering online streaming. It would just be a lot better if they could do it without competition. Now, on the expenses side, there is some good news. As technology improves, network infrastructure has become cheaper for the same capacity, which means the actual cost to stream videos to users is getting better every year. Netflix's cost of revenue adjusted for inflation has actually been stable since 2022, despite adding almost 100 million new users in that time. Included in those costs are the aforementioned servers and network infrastructure, but it also includes the cost to license and produce their own movies, TV shows, and games.
And just every time we see the data centers, I'm reminded of the fact that, you know, all the complaints about the AI data centers never address the streaming service data centers. Oh, and you know, I wonder why. I'm just wondering. Just asking questions.
Another big reason their costs have been improving is because they just aren't licensing as much content as they used to, and that's for two reasons. The first was a business decision to cut down on a cost, especially for content that wasn't drawing in new users. The second reason is simply because they can't get their hands on as many titles anymore, because independent studios have made their own streaming services and want to keep their biggest IPs exclusive, so they can force users to either switch to their platform or shell out for 2 or more streaming services. Netflix is slowly producing its own titles, but that hasn't caught up to the content they are losing from licensing. So then why does this mean that Netflix doesn't care about piracy? Well, publicly they say they do, of course, but piracy is going to hurt their competition a lot more than it's going to hurt them. If people can't find a movie or show on Netflix and then give up and pirate it, that didn't really cost Netflix any money, because the vast majority of content out there...
I mean, that's another point to, like, I understand the argument of owning physical media versus streaming and all the aspects of it. But I think that's absolutely a valid question, Stellar Wingman, to bring that up. Lenny, greetings from terra firma and back home to south of Boston. I hope you're doing well, homie. It's because data is data, and a data center does not differentiate between the two things. Correct, Michael. Correct.
Wasn't theirs to lose, and they most likely didn't spend the money producing it. A 2023 paper in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization titled Pirate and Chill found that when movies moved off Netflix to another platform, piracy of that content increased by more than 20%. Now, first and foremost, that's an amazing name for a professional journal article. But apart from that, it showed why Netflix hasn't been too concerned with online piracy. In a now infamous quote from the company's chief content officer, they said that in order for Netflix to be successful, we need to become movie studios faster than movie studios can become us. Piracy that disproportionately hurt legacy movie studios and their libraries of content was not something that Netflix would encourage. But behind closed doors, they certainly weren't too sad it was happening. Another way to think about this is that obviously Amazon isn't encouraging shoplifting, but it's a problem that hurts their competition far more than it hurts them. Piracy has also been a handy little tool throughout the company's history. Back in 2013, it admitted to using data from online piracy sites to find out what was popular and therefore what was worth licensing. Okay, so Netflix doesn't care about the rise of piracy, but what about the actual Hollywood studios? Well, they obviously do, and they crack down on IP theft with furious anger. But they are in a difficult situation. They could send piracy back to the dark ages by reconcentrating their content onto a single easy platform. But at the moment, that would probably be Netflix, which a company like Disney would obviously not be willing to go along with after investing so much in their own service. If they keep competing though, they are just going to make the experience worse for everybody and probably lose more ground to the high seas. Now, for these companies, this whole fight could not be happening at a worse time. There is a reason why music studios were able to play nice and make their content available just about anywhere while movie studios were fighting to the death. Music is simply much cheaper to produce, and there are far more sources of alternative revenue beyond just directly selling a song or an album. Artists don't make as much from streaming as they would from a physical album sale, but they can make it up in tours, merchandising, and other licensing deals. On the flip side, movies have largely been getting more expensive to produce, while cinema attendance has never fully recovered from its dip during COVID. Ironically, one of the biggest theater releases of the past 5 years was actually for a music studio with the cinema release of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. In the past, poor box offices wouldn't matter as much, because mid-budget movies could make a lot of their money back through DVD sales.
DVD?
Costs are the aforementioned servers and network infrastructure, but it also includes the cost to license and produce their own movies, TV shows, and games.
I just, every time we see the data centers, I'm reminded of the fact that, all the complaints about the AI data centers never address the streaming service data centers. Oh, and I wonder why. I'm just wondering. Just asking questions. What up, Senator? What is DVD?
But obviously, that's not really a thing anymore. So studios have put even more effort into pushing their streaming services to eventually make back the difference. It's a bold strategy, and there are hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap at stake. So executives really want to pretend that eventually it'll work out. But if it doesn't, there are some lessons to be learned from the music industry which didn't beat piracy. It just made it unnecessary. The first is that movies have simply become too expensive for the current market. Studios have recognized that people are only going to the movies for special occasion releases these days because it's expensive, the theater experience isn't that good anymore, and people can just wait a month and watch it for free on one of the streaming services that they were already paying for. Instead of making the whole thing cheaper and putting less of their eggs in a single basket, they have doubled down on producing mega blockbusters. Of the 20 most expensive movies ever made, 19 of them came out in the last 10 years after streaming was already mainstream. These figures also only count the production budget, not the marketing budget. And on the revenue side, the box office doesn't include the share paid out to movie theaters. With even extremely generous estimates of those arrangements, only about half of these releases made their money back. And some in particular, like the Marvel's Snow White, Dial of Destiny, and the latest Mission Impossible movie, are shaping up to be catastrophic losses. So far, studios have been able to justify these flagship productions to their investors by talking about their IP value, which can later be extracted by bringing in customers to their streaming platforms. but that isn't really happening. Customers who join because they want to watch a single movie didn't tend to stay subscribed for very long compared to those who enjoy a deeper library of mid-budget movies or TV shows. I don't know about you, but I tend to take my subscription to whatever streaming service is hosting The Office this month. These huge productions also put more strain on the business as these losses have to be made up somewhere, and that is more often than not increased prices, more ads, and worse overall service. Now, I would forgive you for not feeling too sorry for Hollywood studio executives, but they are really in a no-win situation here. The harder they push back against the changing media landscape, the harder they push people towards the high seas. So anyway, now might be a good time to shamelessly plug that these videos are being made available ad-free on Spotify. So if you would prefer to listen in or watch it over there, I have left a link in the description. And if you think it's just...
I don't particularly have a whole lot of respect for this individual. They provide some value. I see juice box. What do we got next? What do we got? Hour 15. Boop 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 doop boop doop doop. Let's head over to talk about AI and writing.
When we talk about using AI in writing, most people think of one technique. You tell the AI what you want and let it write the whole thing. The appeal of this method is really clear.
And this is from Oregon State University.
You reach the finish line without having to put in very much time or effort. Some people call that efficiency, and they're not wrong. The risk is that people might know the writing came from AI and have a negative reaction. That includes teachers, but also the bosses or colleagues or clients who don't appreciate bots in their inboxes. That group of people seems to be growing, and in fact, using AI can actually damage your professional reputation by lowering people's opinion of your competence and motivation. And so a lot of people have moved on to a second technique. You ask the AI for ideas, then put them in your own words. Because it's your writing, you're less likely to get caught. But the AI is still doing all the quote-unquote thinking. The appeal, again, is that it's easier. You don't have to exercise that organ in your head very hard. But that's also the downside of both these methods. Exercise makes you stronger. Some of us find that really valuable. For some of us, that's the whole reason we go to college, to learn, to improve, to develop the skills that will help us in our careers and personal lives. AI seems to have the opposite effect according to a growing body of research, reducing critical thinking, originality, confidence, and even neural connectivity.
Question. You'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war. Jenny Burns. No one can prove I'm not a bot. I've seen your face. So, yeah. Or that's the actor that you paid to have your face. 16 months. Thank you very much, homie. I appreciate you. Really good at ChatGPT. Don't think I've ever done this. I usually write what I want and ask the model to rephrase this or that. Yeah, I mean, that is a thing that people do. I mean, I know people that had write automated messages by script before AI and they still use it. Yeah. I mean, the whole, like, the thing on the end of an email, right? Like your little, you know, like you name and contact info and maybe a little quote signature, right? Like the signature on an email. That was all automated. We've been automating that since way back. What up, Elron's covered? Form letters are the first version of ChatGPT. They truly are. They truly are. Salutation. Yes.
In other words, using AI makes it harder to think for yourself. That's
again, I question the methodologies of those those studies. Either some of them were done on very small groups of people, some of them were self-reported versus some sort of like more objective testing process, and like questionable. And some of them didn't have long enough time frames for meaningful conclusions.
I can't keep up with today's high-speed, top-of-the-line kids.
Lenny, gifting one out to the community. Fierceling. Well, hello, Fierceling, wherever you are. I no longer even try to do math in my head. I have, like, the only math, I rarely do math in my head. It's either got to be, like, super quick math, right? Like, simple, basic shit. Or I'll, quick maths on some paper, but otherwise it's I use a calculator, right? Is your nephew? All right, cool. What up, PETA? People were actually thinking, people are alleged to have been thinking.
Scary. And so some of us are asking if we really want to sacrifice exercise for efficiency, especially in college. So here's a third technique I'm going to propose. In almost every kind of exercise, it helps to have someone pushing and guiding you, but not helping with the work. If they start lifting your weights or offer to run the last lap on your behalf, you'd probably tell them to back off, especially if you're there to make yourself stronger or faster.
Y'all can run all the laps on my behalf. AI is good for finding the correct approach, but you better check that there are still serious flaws in more general context questions. Yeah, it's all about good prompting, right? Good prompting and verification. And the more you know about what you're talking about, the easier it is to verify. If you are not good in whatever field it is that you're using AI to help you out with, it's often helpful to employ other AI to check the responses of that AI. Because even if there is a hallucination, it is very unlikely that two different AIs are going to hallucinate in the same way.
Can we use AI that way? To answer that question, it might help to think of writing as a process rather than
Oh yeah, no, I totally advocate basic competency. Like fundamentally, before I think anybody should be using the AI, is you should have critical thinking, or you should people have these, but like you need to engage with them. Critical thinking, creative thinking, media literacy, and healthy skepticism, right? Like those are 4 requirements before, in my opinion, before engaging with an AI tool, right? Like it's or life, right? Like these are ground level skills that people need to have.
a single act. First, there's the planning, choosing a topic, figuring out what to say about it, organizing your ideas. Next comes research, looking for more information, seeing what other people have said, discovering counter-arguments. Then there's drafting, when you take all these ideas and wrestle them into sentences and paragraphs. Afterward comes revision, looking for things you missed, areas to improve. These phases can overlap or come in a different sequence or cycle back more than once, but those are the basic steps. Rather than handing any of them off to AI, let's look for places where AI can operate like a workout partner. The best way to find them, I think, is to consider where and how we'd ask a human for help. Let's start with planning. When you're looking for a topic, you might talk to your teacher or even run some initial ideas by them. You're not asking them to choose for you, just to help guide your thinking in a productive direction. Research? You might ask a librarian for good places to track down information, but it would probably never occur to you to ask the librarian to bring the information, let alone read and digest it for you. Revision? Maybe you give...
I am confident that some people have an entitled expectation that they could do exactly that thing. I know it knows the formulas and does the calculations correctly, but the dependencies between formula, it still screws up often enough. Yeah, like you need to be able to verify your outputs in some fashion, right? And you know, you should never you should always question things that agree with you, and you should always question, like, the concept that exists behind mixture of experts, right? Like as an AI tool. The more information that you get from disparate sources, the more reliable that information is going to be, right? If you ran the same prompt through 5 different AI chatbots and 4 of them came back with one answer or within the realm of one answer, and the other one was off on its own thing, then you can confidently assume that the answer that the 80% is providing you with is more valid than the 20% that is off on its own, right? And if you're not confident, run it again, right? Like it doesn't take that long.
Your rough draft to a classmate for peer review, or you take it to a tutor at the writing center, pointing out the parts you're not sure about or find a little shaky. Their fresh eyes can help you see things more clearly, find improvements, even catch typos. But you'd never say, rewrite this whole thing for me better. That's because the one phase where we can't really...
You might. Again, it's about incentives. And this is part of the problem, right? Like, what are my incentives to produce this piece of media, to produce this piece of writing, to produce this whatever, right? What are my incentives to produce content for y'all on Twitch, right? They are intrinsic, right? This is information that I would like to know. This is information that I think other people should know, and we have accumulated a community that is interested in these things and discussing these things and sharing these things, etc., etc. So for me, all of that is intrinsic, right? Like this is something I want to do. If you have fun, Jenny Burns, we are Borg. If you don't have an intrinsic motivation to produce a particular piece of media, then you are often going to choose the shortest, most efficient, least painful route between point A and point B, right? If your boss asks for a piece of information, right? Type me out this report. You are going to want to use the least problematic, the least painful, what have you, method of producing that information for your boss, right? Because that's an extrinsic motivation. You are not interested in this information. Probably. Maybe you are. But assuming that you aren't, you just want to get that report out to them. If you are in school and you have to take a particular class, but you are not interested in that class, your intrinsic motivation to produce a particular piece of media for that class is significantly reduced. So it is incumbent on the professors and whatnot in that class to help imbue that intrinsic motivation into the student in order for them to do the thing. Because if all I'm looking for out of this is a passing grade and I don't really care, then you can't just tell me that I should do this thing, because again, I don't care. And I have 6 other classes that I actually care about. This is just a requirement, and I would not have taken this class if I did not have to. If I write things, they often end up confusing people. In my experience, the AI is much better at structuring and more clear formulations. And that's the thing, is like I don't think the idea of having, like, your voice is I find that your voice, depending on what you're trying to produce, can be like an overstated thing, right? Because very often your voice doesn't need to come into this conversation, right? You're just, these are my ideas, this is my information, I'm just not communicating it in a particularly good way. And because I'm not communicating it in a particularly good way, I'm going to ask somebody else who can communicate it better to do so. And sometimes that's the AI, and that is handy. Can't motivate someone to do something they do not want to do. They'll pay someone else to do it for them or otherwise get outside assistance. 100%. No, it just needs to precisely on point, and I suck at that. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, you know, my voice is kind of shitty. I can't carry a tune to save my life. Ba-dum-bum.
Use AI this way is the drafting. Most of us would be embarrassed to ask another human to do our writing for us. That embarrassment comes from the implicit understanding that we're crossing a line, and that's probably a helpful guidepost about making the same request to AI.
But the AI is not a person. The metaphor is flawed. I understand, like, if you wouldn't ask a human to do it, you wouldn't, you shouldn't ask the AI to do it, but the whole point is that the AI is not a person. I am not taking up someone's time. I am not expecting labor out of a human being without some sort of compensation, all of those kind of things. It's the entire point behind the AI.
But I will tell you personally that sometimes I get stuck in the drafting phase just because the blank page feels so silent and important that I freeze up. To me, AI feels less silent, less important. And I've typed whole paragraphs there just trying to explain myself that I afterward paste into my document. The point isn't to have the AI take it over, just to listen without judgment, which can help loosen the flow of ideas.
True.
I'm still the one trying to explain myself, and the writing is completely my own. That's the guiding principle in this third technique. You always start by doing your best to explain yourself, using the AI as a dialogue.
That's fair, Elron. Like, and I'm not saying that, like, your voice doesn't matter, right? I'm just saying that there are places where your voice matters and places where it really doesn't, right? Again, if you're typing a report or producing a report for your boss, your voice matters a lot less than if you're like typing an article or producing an article for like an online journal or what have you, right? There, your voice is part of the thing. People come to hear my voice, right? Talk about this stuff, right? That is a thing that exists. If like all this content, it's all videos, right? Like you can find all of it's my voice, mine. It's mine. You can use it, but it's still mine, Old Lobster. You can find all these videos on YouTube, right? Like, and on TikTok and whatnot. It's a whole fucking thing. Like, it's all available to you. But what you want is to hear my commentary. Woke identity politics, true. I should read mindfulness scripts, like produce mindfulness content for YouTube or something like that. Like ASMR style? What are you telling me here for meditation? Close your eyes. Draw in a deep breath. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Maybe.
Dialogue partner afterward to help push your thinking. But you have to be proactive, telling it what you want, correcting its interpretations, modifying its ideas. Think of it as a brainstorming session. You don't just take whatever idea comes first, you ricochet off to ideas that are more relevant or accurate or personal or productive. If at any point it starts doing too much, you tell it to back off. You have to decide, I'm the writer, I'm the boss, I'm calling the shots here, and the AI is only an assistant, a collaborator, a subordinate. There's already some research indicating that this technique can counteract AI's worst effects on student learning. That's not to say it's without risk. Once you free the genie from the bottle, will you really be able to resist the temptation of its magic? Even if you do, will the risk be worth it, especially if your brain power alone produces equivalent results? Let me be clear, it's perfectly fine to approach your writing without any AI use at all. It's also fine to consult real...
It's actually disappointing that Brennan the Toast isn't here to do that.
humans on these things, which might have other nice benefits like meeting cool people, building friendships, hearing something hilarious. But if you're going to incorporate AI into your writing process, you might consider giving this third method a try. Use it to push yourself further rather than letting AI push you out of the learning process.
I mean, I disagree on some points, but I understand where they're coming from, and I thought that was a good video, and it looks like, you know, they have a bunch of content. It's good stuff. And this is from a college. Free knowledge. Free knowledge for all y'all. Get that free knowledge. Up next, everyone is cheating. Even the professors.
This video is sponsored by Private Internet Access. Stick around to the end to find out more. A student from Northeastern University demanded her tuition back after she discovered that her...
No, I think the takeaway is to use AI as an assistant, right? Like to use AI to help you be better, but to not use so much AI as to lose your capacity to do the thing. Again, I have some critiques on that depending on what we're talking about. But I think in the creative sphere and at places where your voice matters, I think it's absolutely valid, and I endorse that.
Her professor was using ChatGPT to teach the class. It wasn't fair, she said, because this professor had banned students from using AI while he was using it himself. At another university, a student got some...
And that kind of hypocrisy, fuck you, right? Like, if you are using the AI tool and then not allowing your students to use the AI tool and teaching them the proper way, or the way that you believe is a proper way in order to engage with the tool, then you're just being a hypocrite and go fuck yourself. But like, close your eyes. Draw in a deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. You don't have to pirate AI. It's available like open source. Professors, the students shouldn't use AI. Students, professors shouldn't use AI. Yeah, what up, Raid? For now.
Good news, she had gotten an A on a paper, so then she went to go and look at the comments that the professor had left on it, and she found that the professor had copy and pasted an exchange with ChatGPT. Not only was the professor using AI to grade the paper, but they were sloppy about it too. More and more students are using AI for all of their work, and as one writer at New York Magazine put it, it seems like everyone is cheating their way through college. The way people tell this story, AI is ruining education, and on top of that, Gen Z is too lazy to do any work. But cheating at universities is nothing new. It's a long-running issue, and it has to do with the incentives of education in the United States. And it even involves the widespread
incentives.
issue of academic fraud from professors. We'll explore all of that today, starting with this latest problem, AI. When OpenAI was founded, it
Okay, I've been using AI for training plan and content for trainings. I had to really understand the content to get what I need out of AI. There's a lot of back and forth to dial in on what's needed. Then I'm the one who actually facilitates the training. I don't allow AI note bots in Zoom training rooms because of content protection. Yeah, I mean, like, IP is a thing that exists, and I understand it. But yeah, like, I think that that's absolutely the, correct way, or the most, let's say, not say correct, let's say most beneficial way, right? You are using AI as you, like, if you had another person, right? You had a assistant, a partner, someone who could work on your level with this to prepare this content, and to do a lot of the stuff that would take a particularly long time, or or is really fucking boring to do, any of that kind of stuff. And I think that is an absolutely, and like, it's a valid way to approach AI, and for people to dismiss the validity of that, I find problematic. Oh, don't even. Were you here when we tried to watch a JREG video and it turned into a fucking shit show?
had a mission. It wanted to ensure that all of humanity benefited from artificial general intelligence. If you read a lot of the early writing that was coming out of OpenAI, it sounds rather utopian. They were saying that they were a nonprofit, they would be focused on just doing research and would even be able to give away that research so that it would benefit the world. All of humanity should benefit from this thing they wanted to create, true AI. OpenAI might be a nonprofit, but within OpenAI, there's a for-profit company. And it's this for-profit company that tries to bring products to market. And OpenAI is now worth something like $300 billion. And that's because people really want what they're selling. Every major artificial intelligence company now heavily markets themselves towards students, and it's definitely working. Nearly half of students and teachers at the K through 12 level say that they use AI, and
every software company that had like business utility marketed itself towards students. This is also not a new thing, right? The idea is, if your workers get used to using it, then they want to bring it to the office. And if they bring it to the office, then they can make money off enterprise licenses.
Nearly every college student uses AI in some capacity. The result is that we have issues of plagiarism, cheating, and fraud. AI can write papers quickly, it can make it easy to pass a class, and it frees up a student's time so that they can do stuff that they'd rather be doing, whether that's working a job or thinking about their career prospects or just going out and drinking or something. There are now apps, websites, other services, all dedicated to helping students use AI to cheat and pass their classes. Professors who want to avoid cheating have to find workarounds. They'll sneak in extra words into assignments that are designed to mislead AI,
and again, the entire structure of this conversation or this video is around the idea that is cheating. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that people have sufficiently justified the claim that what the students are doing is cheating, right? It just feels like cheating, but the same argument can be directed in other places, right? Like, you paid off your student loan, so someone else not having to pay off their student loan sounds like cheating. Right? That's to me where that argument goes. Following the Apple model, get the college students used to AI. Exactly.
They'll demand that students take exams with blue books, like literally writing a test with, by hand with a pencil or a pen. This might solve part of the problem, but when it comes to things like take-home assignments or extended essays or even short reading responses, well, the overwhelming odds are that students are using AI to do basically all of that work. The consequences of this are pretty dire. One professor at Cal State Chico said that massive numbers of students are going to graduate from university and they're going to enter the work and they will be essentially illiterate. I think the concern is that whatever skill...
That is the quote from one person, right? And they may be correct, right? But again, to rely on the quote of one person to underpin your argument is flawed.
We think you're supposed to develop when you go to college, when you go to university, aren't being developed at all. That's because more students are finding out they don't need to read or write or have any original thoughts in order to get their degrees. Some universities like Ohio State have decided that the solution is to just embrace AI completely. Ohio State actually says that every student will be encouraged to use AI in every class from now on, but most universities simply don't know what to do. The philosopher Megan Fritz, who teaches at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, wrote an article about this. Fritz sat on several university committees that were trying to come up with AI policies that could help, solve some of these problems at her school, and they got nowhere. They tried to develop policies for departments, but they couldn't keep up with the progress from various AI companies. The technology was just moving too quickly. And in an essay for The Point, she wrote...
And this is why, then what they were doing, how they were doing it was fundamentally flawed, right? Again, let's take a step back. What did we talk about on this channel? What did we just talk about earlier? Critical thinking. What up, chef? Creative thinking. Healthy skepticism and media literacy, right? These skills, regardless of the technological quality of any particular piece of software, AI tool, what have you, these skills will be valuable to you, right? Then you take that and you wrap it in a layer of intrinsic desire to learn. Right? That can be hard. That can be hard. Not everyone wants to learn. But that should be the goal. All those things will persist regardless of the technology. Meritocracy is a lie, therefore cheating is ethical. I'm saying, I understand, and there are problems with that, but, if buying isn't owning, then piracy is not stealing. That's all I'm saying. They say, what are we willing to lose as their basis for not making a decision? I didn't lose the ability to do math because I got a calculator. I was able to do harder math. Yes, and it's what underlies what you're trying to accomplish, right? You have a tremendous amount of knowledge in very particular domains that exceeds my knowledge in those domains to the point where you may as well be speaking another language, right? Setting up the AI bots for James and everything else was just like I could follow the steps that you were telling me to follow, right? But I don't know what I was doing, and broadly high level, I understood some stuff, but there was a lot of it is I'm just doing this because this is what the teacher told me to do, right? And that sounds a lot like school, right? It can be that way. I don't know what I'm doing, but I just follow what the teacher tells me to do, and I will be successful or I will get a good grade. Is that in fact imbuing me with the knowledge that I need in order to have a deeper understanding of what we're talking about? And I would say fundamentally no, right? It's important to understand why you are doing something if you want to understand the thing that you are doing, right? It's not enough to say, if you're making, pasta sauce, you put the onions and the carrots and the celery in the pot and like that. You should understand why. What do the onions, what do the carrots, what do the celery bring to the table that putting them into the pasta sauce is what you want to do, right? And like that. Why should I try and hold off adding garlic until the last possible moment, right? I don't know the answer to the previous question. I know carrots provide sweetness, right? So you get a sweetness added to the sauce and not have to add like a sweetener like sugar, right? And onions, obviously, onions bring onion flavor. I'm not sure what celery brings to the table, right? That is an area of knowledge that I lack. Garlic, if you burn the garlic gets bitter and it can ruin the flavor of the thing that you're trying to produce. So that's why you add it to last. James brought up a point about using a particular kind of oil, right? You want a high smoke point oil when you're cooking. Yes and no. I argue this point, right? Like I didn't argue it in the chat because I'm not getting in there. I disagree. I can absolutely add olive oil at the beginning before I do any of the thing and do it at a high heat because it's not about the pan temperature, it's about the temperature of the oil. And if the oil has materials that it can diffuse its heat into, exactly, Stellar Wingman, if it can diffuse its heat into those materials like onions and carrots and celery and garlic and what have you, then it doesn't matter that it has a lower smoke point because it's not getting to the temperature that it needs to in order to hit that smoke point and go nasty on you, right? And is like the act of stirring. Are you constantly stirring or are you letting it sit? If you're letting it sit, higher smoke point is necessary because it's going to build up to that temperature point in certain areas. But if you're constantly stirring and you're keeping it moving, then not so much. I absolutely use olive oil as the primary oil that I put in the pan when creating good stuff. There's also, you can do mixtures, right? Like both olive oil and butter have a lower smoke point. But if I combine olive oil and butter, then I get this nice layer of like when the milk solids separate, and then you kind of mix those back in, and just as it turns brown, almost like you're doing ghee, right? Like, but instead of scraping off the milk solids, you incorporate them back into it, and then they burn. They don't burn, but they toast, and you get a nice nutty flavor. Then you can, put something in it, and then that flavor is transferred to the food. It's a complex process. Knowing why and what allows you to break the rules. Yeah, it should. Like your pan, having a pan chemistry is complex and chemistry is important. And food is chemistry. Yeah. But as always, cooking is art, baking is science. Right? If you fuck around with baking and you change your numbers, you're gonna get all sorts of weird shit. But if you do you can art your way through cooking just if you understand how the things taste. I just did that whilst making an omelet, olive oil and butter. Yeah, it's good, right? Like I that is my what I cook steaks in, right? If I'm gonna pan sear a steak, I like olive oil and butter. Like I think it's great. There's also a massive lack of critical thinking, etc., due to the last 50 years of failures of the educational system. AI doesn't change that. Exacerbate, maybe, sure. But it's not the reason for students not learning that's on the system. Yeah. And not only just on the educational system, but also on the socioeconomic system that surrounds that educational system, right? One of the things that's problematic for students in learning is the fact that there isn't a a parent available to help drive home and imbue that desire to learn, right? So if you don't have that at home because, the parents both have to work or whatever the hell else, it creates a situation where the child will value learning less, right? And it's not their fault. It's the environment they're coming up in. Fair, one guy, fair, right? Like all things, you should understand what all the rules are so that you know how to properly break them to do the thing that you want to do.
That the biggest difficulty was determining what the goal of an education was supposed to be. And if you can't answer that question, then you probably can't answer any of the questions about AI and cheating. So in his book, The Case Against Education, the economist Bryan Caplan makes the case that Americans spend too much time and too much money on education in general. I would argue against the main thrust of Kaplan's book, I think, but he does make an early point that's really important for this discussion. Much of modern education is really not about passing on skills or learning things. It's simply about getting the degree at the end of the day. And that's because a degree signals certain facts about you. And Caplan says that those include intelligence, conscientiousness, and conformity. Many employers...
And there's also this underlying requirement, right? Like that businesses want you to have like a bachelor's degree for some fucking reason, right? Like, you could have no relation. You could have come up the hard way and, got the experience, but you don't have that bachelor's, well, then you can't get this job. Well, why not? I have all the relevant experience.
Will require a college degree for a high-paying job, but they're not necessarily looking for specific skills that you acquired in the course of getting that degree. An art history major might
just push play on the video, bro.
End up working on Wall Street. After I got a PhD in philosophy, I went into tech. And it's not like my PhD in philosophy was directly setting me up to go work in tech. Many people get degrees in things like communications or psychology, and they get jobs that do not require you to know anything about theories of communication or facts about the human mind. By the way, my new puppy, Apollo, is joining us for this video because he really likes to be held. If the skills you acquire in the course of getting a college degree don't actually matter, then why do employers require one? It's because a college degree does usually signal some facts about the job seeker. It just has very little to do with the content of your education. It basically says that you were able to survive for 4 years at an institution that has kind of arcane and arbitrary rules, and that you were good enough at following those rules and smart enough to navigate them that you could get a degree at the end. And guess what? Working at a large corporation is going to be an experience of surviving an arcane and obscure institution with weird rules. Kaplan's theory doesn't really account for specialist degrees like engineering, but we can set those aside because those are a minority of degrees. I think deep down, actually, many students realize that this is true. They look at many of the classes they have to take in college and they think, why does any of this matter? All I'm looking to do is to just get a better...
I would agree, Ponder Monkey. Like, and again, more than one thing can be true, and you have to look at any problem in a holistic way, not just in and of itself, but of its place in the greater whole. Because if you don't do that, then you are going to be missing features and reasons. A thing is not just a thing is its relationship to its environment, right? And if you don't look at a thing in relationship to its environment, you're missing out on a major facet of why it is the way it is.
Job at the end of this. If you're going to college to increase your career prospects or to climb the social ladder, well, philosophy 101 isn't necessarily going to help you do that. And if you're a student who understands this, then using AI to cheat isn't just reasonable, it might be the rational thing to do. At least it is within your self-interest. You're not there to wax philosophical about Kantianism versus utilitarianism, or to go and write an essay about Charles Dickens. I wish more people wanted to do those things, but it's not why most people go to school. Kaplan really is just thinking about the incentives of getting a college degree. And I think if there's like a big thesis for this video, it's that incentives matter. To make Kaplan's point a little bit clearer, you could look at the phenomenon of diploma mills. These are institutions that set themselves up like colleges and universities. They are often for-profit and unaccredited, and in exchange for some money and very little work, you can get a college degree. It's even a way to get a PhD in some cases. Some schools will simply give you the degree if you pay them enough money. That's the most egregious example, but other schools will simply just make it very easy for you to get the degree. They'll count work experience as credit, for instance. And you'll be able to get out of most of your coursework, so you just...
Okay, I don't like that. Work experience should be counted as credit if the degree is arbitrary, right? Even if the degree is not arbitrary, like, I don't like the dismissive tone he used when it came to work experience as being valid for a degree, because demonstration of proficiency should be part of the educational process. And that's what work experience is. So -1 internets to fucko here.
Take a couple of classes, you write one 20-page paper, and bam, you have a master's degree from online university. And if all you need on your resume is just a degree from some school so that some AI filter at some company will let you through so that a human being will actually just read your resume, well, then it kind of makes sense to go and get a degree, even though these things are, scam. Not having...
It's not kind of, it's absolutely, right? Like, if the whole point, if you have the experience and you're good at the job and you know what needs to be done and you can get in there tomorrow and start working, and the only thing holding you back is that lack of a degree, then it's incumbent on you to get that fucking degree by the easiest way possible in order to get to that next level, right? In the USA, there's also this strange habit of setting up private institutions that then get recognized as official authorities, somehow handing out degrees that are more than a bit wonky. True. You think you got a PhD for McDonald's pay? I do not. I don't know what it is. That's not true. What's not true? Yes, but in many fields, where you get the degree from matters. It does. It does. That is not like, obviously, if you are, for instance, a lawyer, having gone to Harvard and got Harvard law has more value and gravitas than, buff states, right? Like legal, whatever their legal program is, that's not going to have that same level of, gravitas, right? Like, whatever.
A degree is a problem if you're looking for a job. A fake degree solves that problem, and you don't have to learn anything. Perhaps the tragedy of what is happening at many universities where...
And again, like, the idea, which is not to say there you could do a fake degree and not learn anything, but the juxtaposition of the work experience somehow not being valid for credit and the fake degree where you don't learn anything. You already learned stuff. You understand, you've demonstrated proficiency. Demonstrating proficiency should have value. Some government hiring filters are online only. Yes, yeah, and that's inevitable once they have those names in there. What up, Agrica? A person with work experience that goes to study to improve the knowledge will be more interested and follow the topics with another level of understanding. Yes, and there's actually a thing that occurs, anecdotally, but this seems valid, is that, like, older students coming into a class, like, for instance, when I got my residential electrical, tend to be, like, more valued by the teacher because they understand that those people are there to learn, right? Where younger students might not be as there to learn, might be more, just trying to get a degree that's required to make the money or what have you.
Students could just use AI to cheat on everything, is that kind of all education is eventually just going to be fake and made up because nobody actually has to learn anything to get a degree. When I read Kaplan's book, I immediately saw a connection to another issue in academia, the widespread presence of academic fraud. This is research fraud that's committed by professors. Recently, there was the case of a Harvard Business School professor, Francesca Gino. Her tenure was revoked, which almost never happens, and she was fired from Harvard after an investigation found significant evidence of fraud in her research. It seems she had used fake data in multiple studies, and some of the papers where she faked this data was research on authenticity and honesty. It's very rare for tenured academics to ever be fired. If you can get tenure, it is basically a guarantee of a job for life. And that should show you just how serious these infractions were. The investigation into Gino's work started several years ago, and it actually began with some science bloggers. That's where a lot of academic fraud seems to be discovered. These bloggers found significant issues in at least 4 of Gino's published papers. Gino tried to say that she was a victim of defamation and gender discrimination, and that her privacy had been invaded. Then she sued Harvard, she sued the dean of the Harvard Business School, her boss, and she sued those bloggers, but that case was thrown out by a judge. And now Harvard Business School has determined that she really did fake data, and now she's lost her job. But Gino is not alone in committing academic fraud. Throughout 2024, there were many high-profile academics who were found guilty of plagiarism, or as they sometimes put it, inadequate citation, including a former professor of Harvard. And just recently, a PhD student at MIT in the economics program had a paper pulled, and I believe is no longer a student at MIT, after the university investigated it, and they went on to say they had no confidence in the veracity of the research. Because of privacy laws and university policies, MIT really can't say much beyond that. They don't even use the student's name in that announcement, though they give the title of the paper, and if you were to look for the title, you would easily find the author's name. This might seem fairly minor because students cheat on papers all the time. However, this paper was scheduled to be published in a good economics journal, and it had already been posted as a preprint on the website Archive. That's a website where scientists post copies of their research so that it's more freely accessible. In this case, the problem was that the research was fraudulent. If the paper had been legitimate, it would have made this student's career because it had a really provocative conclusion. It seemed to show that using AI actually boosted a firm's research productivity. So incorporating AI would actually make employees more productive. This is a result that many people who are big fans of AI would love to see. It would seem to be a great response to skeptics of generative AI. People were naturally interested in this paper, and it was getting a lot of buzz from the moment it was posted on Archive. And if you're a graduate student, that's the sort of paper that you would want to publish as you go into the job market. It's the sort of paper that would identify you as a young and brilliant scholar who was going to produce great research, and you would definitely get a job. You could be set for life based on a paper like that. And sometimes this academic fraud has real world consequences. One of the most famous academic frauds is Brian Wansink. Wansink was a nutrition scientist at Cornell, and he's actually responsible for some studies that entered the public consciousness. You might believe some of the things that was initially discovered, that's discovered in quotes, by Wansink and his team. Have you ever heard that shopping on an empty stomach is a bad idea because you'll buy more food, or maybe you'll buy more junk food? That was originally from a Wansink study, and I believe that study has been discredited along with much of his other research. He was also responsible for that idea that
if that's true, up until this moment, I totally believed that to be the case.
The size of your plate determined how much you wanted to eat at a meal. In 2017, it was discovered that Wansink had, in some cases, fabricated data, and in other cases, he had done misleading analyses of the data to try and support his claim. The simplest way to describe that, though, is that he committed fraud. He was actually...
Everything's a lie, chat. Everything's a lie. I'm with you, one guy. I feel like if I go shopping on an empty stomach, I will in fact buy more stuff, and not necessarily I will buy the stuff that sounds good to my tum-tum right now, you know what I mean? We don't need studies to tell us that things don't matter. The points don't matter and everything is made up.
He found out because he wrote a blog post about his own methodology, and he admitted that sometimes he would have graduate students go over experiments that seemed to be initial failures and go looking for interesting results in the data. And this is a classic sort of research misconduct. And Lansing, like Gino, was only discovered because some science bloggers got interested in the issue. They started looking into it.
The real fraud was the friends we made along the way. I'm stuck. I'm jammed up. One sick shopping on empty don't match. Okay, so here's the thing. So these are all from 2013. So those are all let's say flawed. Okay. No, that didn't give me. All right. I need assistance. I need an adult. Is there research showing this study is flawed? So in relation to the diploma mills, I feel like what I got from him is that he's referring to the fact that diploma mills don't value work experience in a meaningful way. So it's a twofold problem. The traditional route by accredited institutions need to value work experience and provide credit for them. And diploma mills shouldn't exist because they don't really verify if any of the work experience is true/valid. Yeah, that's fair. Like the only reason for that study is to show food retailers how to sell more food. Yeah, I mean, everything's about making money. There is a good way to do science and a bad way. The bad one is to have an idea and search for material to support it. You do the search first and work out your idea, hence correlation, not causation. I agree. I made the mistake to actually talk to scientists about some ideas, and they showed me some basic concepts of conduct and how much trash that was really, but it was worth it for the approach alone. Yeah. When I was in Boy Scouts, I asked everyone their blood type and came to the conclusion mosquitoes prefer O blood based on who was getting bit more. My research was crap, but my conclusion was right. Cool. The Wansink scandal. Wansink. Significant body of research and investigative journalism that calls into question the validity of the study you cited. While this specific paper may not have been formally retracted, the established pattern of misconduct. Okay, so again, like we could go deeper. Maybe there are, inaccuracies within this report from Gemini, but while there are some issues with Wanzik's study process, his methodology, p-hacking, retractions and corrections, impossible data, that particular study has not been retracted. So this person may be incorrect. What you got for me? Grocery shopping while hungry leads to extra food purchases. This is a new survey from 24, so good, 11 years after. A poll of 2,000 Americans found that most people make 2 grocery runs a week, budget of $162. More than 3/4 of respondents admitted. Okay, so this is a self-report. So it could be accurate, but self-reports are less accurate than objective observation, right? That's the concern. Did they actually, because this is the question, right? Because they're responding to a survey. Did they actually blow their budget if they shop while hungry, or did they remember or feel that way, right? 62% of people said they typically spend up to 20% more than they'd planned. Only a fifth, 20%, reported that they never overspend on groceries. So, like, this could be indicative of the thing, or again, because it's self-report as opposed to observation. What up, Mr. Burns? Excellent. Buying more food is not necessarily a mistake if you end up eating it and it's not unhealthy food. Yes, like that. We're just trying to discover whether or not shopping while hungry leads to extra food purchases. The data appears to be mostly anecdotal rather than observational. Maybe they're hungry because their pantry is empty. Maybe. To be honest, most people do not want to admit they bought an inferior product. How many people will say the car they bought sucks? Right, like, and that's why self-reported data is questionable, right? And this goes back to my issues with some of the cognitive decline AI studies. Is a bunch of the data in some of those studies is self-reported data rather than observational data. And self-reported data is lower quality. It just is. Because I'm asking you to tell me the story of what you believe to be true. And because this is a thing that happens, because I am an authority figure, you want to present yourself in the best possible light. And sometimes presenting yourself in the best possible light is providing me with the information that you think I want to have, right? There are a bunch of problematic things that come along with self-reported data versus observational data. And it's why I have questions with polling in general, whether they're political or what have you. There's also some kind of dynamic between people who are scammed and scammers. Often the scam will not accept being scammed and defend the scammer. Really? Is that a thing that can happen? He asks as a citizen of the United States.
And then once they found something interesting, they kept digging. When Cornell reviewed his research, they found many problems, including misreporting research data, problematic statistical techniques, failure to properly document and preserve research results, and inappropriate authorship. When we're talking about student misconduct at universities, like using AI to cheat in all their classes, I think it's also important to look at professors and ask questions about why do so many professors commit research fraud? Or you could ask the more general question.
But do you hear the phrasing of that statement?
In all their classes, I think it's also important to look at professors and ask questions about why do so many professors commit research fraud?
How many is so many? Right? Because the implication that so many is a lot. What has been presented to us in this video is 2. Now, I'm not saying either way because I don't have the data, right? Like, I try to be as data-driven as possible, right? But the implication of that is like, oh, it's got to be like half, right? Like, or if not more, right? But like, is it? Because you've given me two, and they seem to be two high-profile ones rather than like some average shit. Self-reported data is like asking people if they wash their hands after using the bathroom. Everyone says yes, but the soap dispenser isn't fully getting wet. Exactly. The soap dispenser is observational data, right? Like you could measure the amount of soap in the dispenser and measure the number of people who use a bathroom over a given period of time and use those 2 points of data to kind of extrapolate how many people actually wash their hands. What percentage of those people actually wash their hands? Now, it's going to be flawed. Did this person, but you can control for this, I guess, right? Did this individual use 3 pumps or 1, right? Like some people want more soap, some people use less soap, etc. It's still not accurate because someone could, exactly. Me pee-pee is clean. I don't know how to do the voice because I haven't heard that, but yes.
Or you could ask the more general question, just why do they lie? We like to think of scientists as noble individuals in pursuit of truth. How are they tempted to abandon this pursuit of truth and then go and commit fraud? One of the best writers on this subject is Liam Coffey-Bright. He's a philosopher at the London School of Economics, and he studies the social epistemology of science.
Right, like, and then there's that still a ring. Like, if you want to get granular with it, right? Like, how many watch them? How many twinkle twinkle little star? Did you do all the things? Did you go between the fingers? Right? Did you wash your tips, right? Like you got a back of the hand as well as the front of the hand, right? Did you get in there?
In other words, he studies how the institutions and group dynamics of science affect scientific progress.
That is absolutely valid, Mr. Burns. People doing research are the only ones that can commit research fraud. So professors are more likely to do it than non-researchers. This is true.
And in a paper, Why Do Scientists Lie?, Bright points out that if you have a PhD in physics or some other science, you could actually go and get rich by leaving academia and entering industry. If you're looking to get rich as a scientist, you're better off just leaving academia. And that would suggest that most professors don't commit fraud because they're greedy. If they were really greedy and just wanted more money, they would just quit their university jobs. Bright instead defends an idea that's originally due to Robert Merton. Merton theorized in the 1960s that scientists are what we could call credit seekers. Another term that Bright and Merton use is honor. They seek status in the scientific community, the way we have arranged our institutions, and you achieve status by producing research, and we typically want novelty, so we want the result.
And it's also a requirement. Publish or die is a requirement, right? Like, it's not just that they themselves intrinsically seek credit and validation. It's also a requirement of the environment that they exist in.
To be new and volume of output. Most academic researchers go through something called a tenure review at some point in their career. This is where academics evaluate your work and they decide whether or not you should be granted tenure. And if you get tenure at a school, you are basically guaranteed a job for life. You're not going to become fabulously wealthy this way, but it essentially guarantees an upper middle class existence. And if you fail your tenure review, typically you're fired. And to pass your tenure review, you prove that you're a good researcher, and two of the major metrics that we use to judge this are the number of articles or books that you've published and how often you're cited by other people. So essentially we're asking, do you produce a lot of research, and is that research interesting enough that people keep talking about it when they do research? Turns out that both of these metrics can be gamed. There are journals that you can pay to publish your academic papers. It's fairly easy to get caught doing this, but some academics still do it. Another way, though, is to commit fraud. And most academics who commit research fraud probably don't think they're doing anything that bad. And they're not going to do things that are as egregious as some of the people that we've talked about today, like where they just fake data, they make things up. So instead, they're fudging statistics. They slightly misdescribe the evidence. They might even believe that they're doing nothing wrong. When you're properly incentivized, you can deceive yourself. If you want to then get...
And a very common way, I don't want to say the most common, a very common way to do that is to excessively like drop data points, right? Because if I can cut out this section of data points, then the remaining data points validate my conclusion, right? So that's like, that is a thing that happens, right? Where they're not outright lying, they're just ignoring and obfuscating uncomfortable facts.
It's cited more, well, you can pay for that too. You can still get caught. So again, if you want to avoid scandal and boost your citations, you just need to publish new and interesting ideas. Take a look at how Bright puts it.
And if you do it in a sufficiently complex manner, you can validate that filtering process to get by a bunch of the gatekeepers, right? Like, it seems right, and even under peer review, it might not get noticed, right? It's only when you go to actually replicate the science that you did that people will discover those additional data points, and at that point in time, you would end up with a problem.
I just want and need credit for new...
Like, eliminate enough stars and you have a constellation. Exactly. Right? It's like that. It's a crab as long as you ignore all the other things. Leave a message.
Results. To ensure their results are new, i.e. novel enough to have a plausible claim to establishing priority, scientists have to do their work sufficiently quickly that nobody else beats them to the punch. So because these scientists have to work fast, they are incentivized to either be sloppy or to commit fraud. See, that's the incentive. Researchers commit fraud because they are rewarded for publishing often and for publishing big results and for appearing to be geniuses. So they fudge the numbers, they sometimes outright lie, and they fabricate data. Other times you plagiarize, where you just steal research from other people. In other words, you find a way to cheat. I think when students decide to cheat in college, essentially what they're trying to do is game the system. They want the economic or lifestyle benefits of an education, but they don't want to have to put in the work. Human beings are often lazy. They look for shortcuts. It's a normal way to behave. It might not be an admirable way to behave, but it's at least normal. And the academics who commit fraud...
Like, you could argue that cheating is a survival trait and an evolutionary plus going back, right? Like, the tiger didn't give a fuck whether or not you were cheating. Your people, your tribe, your group, whatever, didn't give a fuck if you were cheating, if you were able to steal something away from anyone who is like the other or is a different animal species or whatever. So there's that, right?
Are doing roughly the same thing. They want the benefits of having done this great research, but they look for shortcuts. You look at both of those cases, there's one common lesson, simply that incentives matter. How you structure an institution matters, and how an institution is structured and what it rewards matters. There aren't going to be quick fixes to either problem. Part of the problem is you have to convince people that being truthful or doing your homework or really thoroughly going over all your data matters. And essentially what you're doing is convincing people to spend more of their time doing things that probably they don't really want to do. And this is, I think, the big challenge that universities around the country are going to be facing. I've talked many times in this channel about the ways that universities have sort of lost their way. They are beholden to a certain economic model of education, which can make it difficult to see why actually getting an education in the first place matters. And we're seeing more attacks on higher education from various parts of the government. A day or two before recording this, I saw the news that Indiana University, which is a premier state university that's known for its language programs, just cut many of those programs due to low enrollment. There's a new state law that says that if you don't have a certain number of graduates per year, the major and the PhD program and everything just go away. And so now they've just gutted some of the best language departments in the country. When it comes to education in the United States, I think we're at an inflection point. Universities have to figure out what they want to offer to the world, what they want to offer to students, and what they want to be going into the future. People might know that I used to be an academic, and one of the most difficult things about leaving academia and becoming an independent researcher was that I lost access to institutional libraries. And that means I don't have access to things like scholarly journals. So sometimes I end up going down rabbit holes on the internet trying to find the right PDFs.
Yar?
And whenever I do that, I want to make sure that I'm using a VPN. And in particular, I use private internet access, and they're sponsoring this video. A VPN essentially is a way for you to browse the internet more securely. It hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection.
Yeah, the rest of this is an ad for a VPN that I have no idea. Funny, we talked about Liz the developer earlier. And when asked about VPNs, they only endorsed one, and it was because they take cash in the mail, right? That you can send them cash and they will give you a VPN somehow. I don't know what that's about, but that is definitely some anarchist level fucking shit. Until the government, yeah. What do we got? Or almost done. Almost perfect. Look at that. We got to the end of the video. It is almost noon. We did it, chat. We did it. You can do it. I maybe Potter Monkey. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works, right? Like, yeah. I was always taught sending cash in the mail is probably a bad idea, right? Like, unless you don't care about that cash, because it will disappear and there's nothing you can do about it. But again, when you're operating on the fringes, then thank you, Stellar Wigrid. When you're operating on the fringes, then that kind of stuff is less of a concern. At least you know how much money you're losing. Yeah, like as soon as you put it in the envelope and put it in the mailbox, it's gone. And then you can only hope for the best. I will be back tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is Thursday. Let me just check real quick. Make sure, check the schedule. Yes, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern for more AI and AI accessory content. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day, which is already in progress. And in the meantime, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Chuggy loves you. So do I. Be great.